with Tobin, Solana, Omar Kelly, and Chris Perkins on FM 104.3 WQAM, Miami's sports leader.
Gameday Uncensored on FM 104.3 WQAM is brought to you by the Lexus TX. Room for all your passions in 3 rows of luxurious comfort. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. By Edmore Sawgrass Buick GMC. Catch massive savings on over 22 acres of new Buick and GMCs at Edmore Sawgrass Buick GMC. Get backed by Morse and visit EdmoreSawgrassBuickGMC.com. And by JM Lexus. JM Lexus has the best team in the business. A 4.8 Google rating with over 22,000 reviews and counting. JM Lexus, West Sample Road, Margate.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. It is Game Day Uncensored. Hockman Crowder Solana show ends. We kick out Hawk and Crowder, and in steps in the third part of that show. I'm Solana. Josh Appel is in today for Brendan Tobin. He unfortunately will not be with us today, but Tobes will be back next week when the Dolphins are back at it at home. Dan Day is along for the ride today. Dan Day will be hosting Game Day Uncensored postgame edition late into the night. We got Thursday night football. We've got Dolphins primetime against Lamar Jackson, who will play today, and the Baltimore Ravens. Appel, no matter what has happened throughout the season, and the Dolphins entering with some momentum, or I shouldn't say momentum, off the back of the best win of the season. You get primetime Thursday night football. You got to be jacked up for that, man.
What is better than a little bit of primetime football? Dolphins trying to put things together, stack another good performance after their best, as you said last week. Unfortunately for them, they're running into a Ravens team that essentially has the same exact goals going into tonight that the Dolphins do.
Yes, sir. Game Day Uncensored brought to you by the Lexus TX. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. Before we get into everything, what happened with the Dolphins and the Falcons last week, because I don't think anybody was expecting that. I certainly was not. There are a couple roster moves, so we'll start right there. Dolphins just released a couple roster moves. They have activated Jason Marshall Jr. off the injured reserve list. They have also elevated cornerback Isaiah Johnson and tight end Hayden Rucci to the active roster for tonight's game. Not surprising moves. The Dolphins are a little banged up coming into tonight. They'll be without Storm Duck for the remainder of the season. He was carted off. It seems like Bradley Chubb is going to play tonight. At least he thinks he's going to play tonight, which is good news. No Julian Hill tonight. Looks like D. Eskridge is going to go, but there you go. Jason Marshall Jr. off the reserve list. Isaiah Johnson elevated, and tight end Hayden Rucci elevated as well. Appel, I don't know if a lot of people, certainly if you look at the line, Dolphins right now are 8-point underdogs at home. I don't know if a lot of people are buying into one win that Miami had. Great win in Atlanta. I don't know if many people, especially nationally, are buying into that one win. I don't think many people locally are buying into that one win. And it's funny because these two teams meet, both only 2 wins, but massively different expectations for the trajectory of these two franchises after tonight.
Solana, the Ravens are still the favorites to win the AFC North.
That's crazy.
They're 2-5, and they're still the favorites to win the AFC North. They're getting Lamar Jackson back. They have a fairly easy schedule by record the rest of the season, but we know how anything can happen in this league. The Dolphins under Tua Tagovailoa have been touchdown plus underdogs quite a bit in his career, like they are tonight. We were talking before we came on the air about this. Tua Tagovailoa, as a starting quarterback, as a 6-point or more underdog, has covered every single time except for one, and they pushed. And that was back in 2021. They were a 15-point dog at the Bills, and they pushed in that game. I'm not saying the Dolphins are going to win tonight, but they're at home, home dogs on a Thursday night. Usually those games are close. Now, do you think the Dolphins defense could put together a performance again this week like they had last week? Big reason why. The Dolphins went up against Kirk Cousins a week ago. And newsflash, Kirk Cousins' skill set, not the same as Lamar Jackson. And so they were able to kind of zero in on stopping Bijan Robinson, and they did a great job at that to their credit. But now you have to contend with Lamar Jackson, who is supposedly fully healthy after missing 3 games. Derrick Henry seems like he's starting to get things going again. Then you've got Justice Hill and Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman.
They got
and
weapons,
Mark Andrews.
bro. They got weapons.
And as I say all these names, you realize why they're still the favorite to win the AFC North. They're getting healthier on defense in general. Their defense has been better the last couple of weeks. So it's not necessarily surprising that the Dolphins are 8-point dogs tonight, but historically, the Dolphins in those 8 games when Tua starts as a dog like that, 7-0-1 and covering the spread.
Yeah, that's interesting. For those of you who are thinking of wagering, I'm waiting for that line to get up to Ravens 8.5. I think people are going to keep hammering the Ravens, and I would put it in right there. Dolphins plus 8.5 at home, primetime game. It's funny because some of these Thursday night football games, historically speaking, going back the past couple seasons, they're just a train wreck. Like, it's not good football. The brand of football being played is not good. That hasn't really been the case this year. I think back to the Giants beating the Eagles 34-17. Jackson Dart coming in, getting the win. You had a 49ers-Rams game that was wildly entertaining that went into overtime in Week 5. Even a couple weeks ago, Bengals-Steelers was entertaining 33-31. That was a fun game. I know last week was kind of a stinker. Chargers just ran away with it against the Vikings team that literally they're looking for quarterbacks. I mean, you're 6'4".
They signed John Wolford this week because Carson Wentz no longer has a shoulder. It's just gone.
Literally, it's gone. What type of game suits the Dolphins more in this matchup in your mind? Because just a mud fest tonight, right? Like a slugfest. Just try to grind out victory down the stretch. 1-score game, low scoring. I think suits the Dolphins from the standpoint of you'd be in the game. It means Lamar and the Ravens offense hasn't really built any strong momentum going into the fourth quarter. I think from that standpoint, it suits you, but also the better teams, the good teams typically win those games. And I think the Ravens just are a better team. They have a better quarterback. They have a better offense. I think their defense overall is better. As you mentioned, they've been better since some bodies have come back. So I don't know. I don't know what game specifically is more conducive to how the Dolphins want this one to play out. Do they want the shootout? Last time Tua played a shootout against the Baltimore Ravens where it was back and forth, arguably his best game. I don't know.
So I think that you will see something similar to what the Dolphins did approaching in their offensive approach. Like last week, you mentioned Hayden Rucci was active. He's obviously going to be active for Julian Hill, but we saw Daniel Brunskill get a lot of playing time as an extra blocker. I think the Dolphins are going to try and keep the ball, keep it out of the hands of Lamar Jackson, and I feel like seeing a merging of what we saw against Buffalo, because I thought that was a phenomenal game plan for Mike McDaniel, and I thought aside from those the interception at the end and the unfortunate Zach Sealer penalty on a punt, the Dolphins executed that game plan to a T against Buffalo earlier in the season. And I feel like you have to approach this Ravens offense in a similar way that you would when you face Josh Allen. And the best way to do that, run the ball, keep the ball out of their hands. I know that we have grown accustomed to, at the height of this Dolphins era, being high octane, quick offense, big plays. But I feel like the Dolphins are going to try to put together multiple, long, methodical drives tonight to keep the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands and keep Derrick Henry and all those guys off the field. That gives them the best chance to win. If they have to get into a shootout, I don't know how well it's going to go for them.
What do you think, Dan? You think it's more of a shootout tonight between these two teams, couple defenses that are trying to get back to where they expect it to be, couple offenses trying to push momentum, Lamar back in? You think a shootout tonight, or is this more of a slugfest?
No, this is more of a slugfest. Mike McDaniel knows where his bread is buttered, and there's no way he wants to go toe-to-toe with a battering ram like Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, even if not 100%. That's a serious weaponry.
Gameday Uncensored is brought to you by Edmore Sawgrass Automall. Edmore Sawgrass Buick GMC's entire inventory is on sale, and all backed by Morse. Click EdmoreSawgrassBuickGMC.com to start shopping GMC. We are professional grades. There's no doubt. You mentioned Mike McDaniel's really good game plan. There really is no doubt that some of the pressure was alleviated. I'm not saying he's not on the hot seat. He's certainly still is. The team has an atrocious record. They have fallen well short of expectations. So let's not get crazy here. But some of the pressure, I think, has been alleviated after that win. And here's how I know that, Appel. Going into that Falcons game, we're all basically, our pregame show last week was How does Chris Greer still have a job? How does Mike McDaniel still have a job? Why would this team listen to Mike McDaniel following that Browns win if he was talking about the same messages going into that, or the Browns loss, talking about the same message going into the Browns loss, and clearly it didn't register with anybody. It was the worst game of the season against arguably the worst team they had played to that point, other than the Jets, which was their lone win. But we had no controversies this week, albeit a short week. But we've had no
baby steps, though. It's a positive.
Right. I mean, Tua didn't say anything inflammatory. Nobody picked up any comments that went viral, and Pat McAfee wasn't laughing at Tua Tagovailoa. Again, albeit short week, but it proves a point, which is winning cures that type of stuff. When you lose, you're under pressure. You're under pressure. You're under scrutiny constantly. Everything you say gets taken out of context. And even this week, like Mike McDaniel's 17-minute long answers just seemed a little shorter this week.
Well, that's what I was going to say. After wins, you put up with it a little bit. Oh, I wonder what he was having this morning. The little quips about, I guess the game plan is not to throw 10 interceptions this week. Yeah, like that's a little more cutesy and a little more appreciated after a W. But I think that, sometimes we get caught up in the anger and the stress and the frustration of not meeting expectations and watching bad football. That's what fans do. And again, one weekend, one win can completely change the feeling. Now, again, they're 2-6. I mean, this is still a team that is more talking about, are they going to sell as opposed to are they going to buy at the deadline? They are going to either sell or do nothing. And I think that's pretty clear. So you don't want to poke holes in last week. It was a nice performance. It was a nice win. Maybe they could put it together again this week. But certainly a better feeling heading into this one, because again, it did feel like the wheels were completely coming off after Cleveland. A couple of frustrating losses in a row. They looked kind of shaky at the end of the Jets game. Does Mike McDaniel still have the locker room? And I think to his credit and to the team's credit, they've stuck together for the most part.
They have. They haven't jumped ship on him. I think beating the Falcons, no matter who their quarterback was, and man, Kirk Cousins sucks, man.
He's got to be hurt, broken, everything. Like that dude's got nothing left.
He hasn't played in the season, and he's been sitting behind Michael Penix. And then here you go play a game. And by the way, you don't have Drake London in the game, and they just he could not complete passes. Like it was awful.
The Falcons are such a bizarre team. Couple of great wins this year, including the one against Buffalo. And then a 24-point loss to a team in the Dolphins that came in with one win, and a 30-0 loss on the road against Carolina, who's turned out to be a solid group. But at the time, the Falcons were feeling good about themselves. And a 30-0 shutout. Michael Penix looking like he shouldn't be in the NFL in that game. They're not a team. But when you're 1-6, now 2-6, you don't ask questions. You just play the game in front of you, and if you win, that's a good thing.
And there's really no doubt. You talk about the Dolphins being sellers next Tuesday, trade deadline. We're going to get into that later on because there was a couple reports today. And I know, look, there's a game to be played, so I don't want to get bogged down too much in trade deadline. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that after this game tomorrow, the whole weekend leading up to Tuesday, and then we'll react to whatever the Dolphins do or don't do. There's no doubt the Ravens enter this game with way more pressure, immense pressure that the Dolphins just don't have. Nobody's expecting the Dolphins to compete in the AFC East. Nobody expects them to rattle off 7 straight wins like they did in 2021 in a similar type of game where they had lost 6 straight or 7 straight, beat Houston, came back, beat the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday Night Football with Tua entering the game for Jacoby Brissett. And then that was game 2 of a 7-game win streak. Nobody's expecting that, man. Like, this era, for the most part, is donezo. That's kind of, I think, the feeling everybody unanimously agrees with. The Ravens, I mean, there's immense pressure for them to win this game on the road, get back on track, and start stockpiling victories.
I mean, even when Lamar was healthy to begin the season, they were 1-3 through 4 games with him as their starter when he was healthy. They were Super Bowl contenders. They were AFC contenders coming into the season. I don't think anybody saw this start from them. It didn't help, of course, they were ravaged by injuries the first 5 weeks of the season. But as we said earlier, still favored to win the AFC North.
Yep.
Everybody still expects them to win. And this is one that if they lose, I think you might start hearing a lot of noise about old Harbaugh over there in Baltimore.
We'll talk about that too, because I think the whole thing is ridiculous, but who knows? Maybe a win today makes me feel different. We're streaming live on YouTube and Twitch. Our channel is 1043 WQAM or Miami 1043 WQAM on Twitch. We're streaming live on the Odyssey app. We're obviously live on FM 1043 WQAM. We'll be live all night long because we've got Game Day Uncensored. Appel, Dan Day, Solana will take you up until 7:45. I'll jump on for the Heat broadcast. We're going to broadcast Heat Spurs, first game of a West Coast road trip. Then we'll do like an abbreviated little Heat post-game show. And then Dan Day is going to take over with Game Day Uncensored post-game edition, Dolphins Ravens reaction.
You're invited to stick around, Solana, so it could be like 24 straight hours of Solana right
Let's
here
go,
on 104.3.
Let's go. Yeah, if you hate me, I'm sorry, man. Tough day for you. But again, Thursday night football, and I think overall people are looking forward to it. A lot of people probably getting out of work, heading over to Hard Rock Stadium right now. Weather's perfect for a Thursday night football game, for a little tailgate action as well. Game Day Uncensored brought to you by the Lexus TX. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. On the other side, we're going to really dive into that victory against the Atlanta Falcons. We're going to recap what the Dolphins did that put them in a position to have their best performance of the season. You're listening to Game Day Uncensored on WQAM.
WQAM, broadcasting live from the
the pregame show for real Miami football fans on FM 104.3 WQAM.
The Miami Dolphins play Thursday Night Football tonight against the Baltimore Ravens. Welcome back to Game Day Uncensored, right here on FM 104.3 WQAM, streaming live on YouTube and Twitch for those of you who would like to watch. Those of you headed out to the game, enjoy tonight as the Dolphins look to maybe put a little win streak together. It would be their first win streak of the season. We're going to recap their victory against the Atlanta Falcons. Dan Day producing for us tonight, and we have Josh Appel filling in for Brendan Tobin. Tobin will be back with us next week. I am Alejandro Solana. Dolphins now 2-6, 34-10 win over the Atlanta Falcons. And despite that being a 24-point advantage, it felt like it was even more. Really, the Falcons got a garbage time touchdown at the end. The Dolphins were not only the better team, but they rolled the Falcons outside of that first drive, which, not going to lie, was a little...
Well, I saw that first deep throw down the sideline from Tua, and I was
Right.
like, oh, God, another one of these.
Yeah.
A nothing gain to HN, a first down, the incompletion, and then a sack.
And
we're
a sack.
thinking,
And you're like, oh, no. But then you get to see Kirk Cousins in action for the first time. You're like, okay. Things are probably going to be a bit even. And then Dolphins come out, sustain long drive. They punch it into the end zone. Who else but Devon Achane? You had the shocking turnaround from the Dolphins offense and the defense. You had Bijan Robinson, who all of us were saying a lock to go over on whatever you wanted to bet him, like touchdowns, rushing yards, receiving yards, all-purpose yards, whatever you wanted to bet Bijan Robinson. Everybody just felt like that was a lock to go over, considering what opposing running backs have been doing to the Dolphins, and he was entering that week as one of, if not the best, runners in or rushers in the NFL. But I want to start here, Appel. What side of the ball impressed you more? Because I think I can make a strong case for both. I think the offense was phenomenal. It was Tua's best game, maybe going back to 2023, probably.
Yeah.
And you obviously had the implementation of the run game, the 6 linemen coming in, but the defense to me, and I know it's Kirk Cousins, I get that, but to shut down Bijan Robinson, when we use the term shut down, I don't think we're exaggerating. Shut down Bijan Robinson. The defense now, with how bad they were and how disappointing they were, starting to look like they have kind of put something together to build off of.
we'll start there. Tua was the efficient, confident quarterback that I thought was gone. Like, I thought that player was not coming back. And he only had 6 incompletions, the 4 touchdowns. He was on point. He could see Jalen Waddle. And Waddle, 5 catches on 6 targets. I think the one incompletion was a drop, was it not?
Yeah.
To Waddle. So they were both great. Achane, another great performance. But you talk about shutting Bijan Robinson down. He was held to under 3 yards per carry. His longest run of the game on 9 attempts was 7 yards. And I know that a lot of the conversation was, well, why didn't the Falcons give Bijan Robinson the ball more? Why didn't they give him the ball more? Well, they were trailing the entire game. And Kirk Cousins, you get behind the sticks, you can't start running the ball all over the place again. So the Dolphins' defensive game plan from Anthony Weaver was fantastic. They dared Kirk Cousins to beat him. He could not, and that allowed them to focus on stopping Bijan Robinson, which they were able to do. And we talked about in the first segment how you'll likely see a plan similar to what we saw against Atlanta, similar to what we saw against Buffalo. The time of possession on Sunday in Atlanta, the Dolphins had the ball for almost 38 minutes to 22 for Atlanta. They were running the ball effectively with all 3 running backs.
Right.
Which was refreshing to see. Jalen Wright got some run as well.
It's
Ollie
what we
Gordon.
thought we were going to see, right?
Yeah.
Like, we thought Jalen Wright coming prior to training camp when things kind of fell off a cliff. We thought it was going to be this 2-headed monster, and then you were bringing in the bruiser that you drafted in Ollie Gordon. You just thought there was going to be not necessarily a 3-headed monster, but consistent play from 3 guys, certainly building throughout the season, and you never got that. Jalen Wright was inactive, for most of the season until the past couple weeks, and you finally, and I'm not saying like Ollie Gordon had like the best game ever. Jalen Wright didn't have his best game ever, but Ollie Gordon getting into the end zone, 10 carries was a career high, 9 carries on 11 snaps for Jalen Wright. you use them finally. You found ways to implement them in the running game.
Yeah, they rushed for 140 yards. I know it was just under 4 yards per carry, but it was the perfect game plan. Mike McDaniel was a run game coordinator with the 49ers. He coached receivers in the past, but his last focus as an OC in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan was their run game coordinator. And we saw in 22 and in 23 just how good this rush offense can be. Last year, they took a massive step back, but I think that Sunday in Atlanta against a really good Falcons defense, we saw that Dolphins rush offense that resembled not just what we saw from Tua, but from that rush offense as well, what we saw in 22 and 23. And that's a good sign. They're going to have to do that again tonight if they're going to win. I'd love to see another scenario where Achan's not getting 18 carry or not getting 20 carries again, where they're able to spread it out a little bit. They get it to him, obviously, of course, in the passing game as well. They targeted him 7 times. Said it earlier this week. I'm like worried about his physical well-being with how often he touches the ball. But to your first question, the Dolphins offense has had this team in position to win games over the course of the season outside of the first week in Indianapolis and outside of the Cleveland game. At the end of the day, they've scored in the 20s and they've given their teams a chance to win, and the defense at the end couldn't get a stop, or the special teams gives up a return touchdown. Whatever could go wrong had gone wrong. And so the story of Sunday was the Dolphins defense and how they were able to execute their game plan of shutting Bijan Robinson down, daring Kirk Cousins to beat him, taking advantage of Drake London not playing. That's what it should have looked like, and that's what it did look like.
And you have to imagine, right? Like you still haven't seen the sack numbers you wanted to from that front seven. You haven't seen that unit really impose their will. I know Jordan Brooks, like this guy deserves a ton of credit. I think he's still the NFL's leading tackler, but regardless, wins AFC Defensive Player of the Week when you have a monster up in Cleveland who had 5 sacks. And they said, no, that didn't impact winning. This Jordan Brooks performance did. 10 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and he got the sack for the Dolphins. But despite that, as bad as it's looked this year, as much criticism Anthony Weaver deserves, again, I understand there's a lot of Dolphins fans who on Monday were texting into our show, why are you guys celebrating that win? This is ridiculous. We should be rooting for losses. Let's try to tank, draft pick. We know the conversation. But my response to that on Monday was, and I don't know if you feel the same way, Appel, I'll worry about that a little bit later on in the season. I'm not actively rooting for the Dolphins to lose a game. I'm just not. I'm not approaching that. I'm not approaching these games that way. I don't think they'll win many games. I don't think they're a very good team. And I don't know if I'm buying into this defense just yet. This is the test, right? If they can do it again today, then next week against Buffalo, you feel like, hey, you're going to be in the game. They're going to give you a chance to win. But overall, you're seeing some really good performances from guys like Jordan Brooks. You're seeing Kenneth Grant be a little bit better week by week. I'll go to Jonas Savaiinaia, who had his best performance in Atlanta. And it's not saying much. It's just one game. But overall, if you're looking for bright spots, silver linings of, for the most part, a brutal Dolphins season, the Falcons win is certainly one of them because of Tua Tagovailoa's play, but also a lot of guys that underperformed this season are getting better week by week.
You don't have to make big, sweeping analyses about the entire season based off of one game. It's okay to say that on Sunday, the Dolphins played a really good game against one of the league's best defenses. The quarterback, who was much maligned all season, had his best game in 2 seasons. It's okay to say all these things. It all happened. If we're going to be the guys who sit here and rip the team apart through a 1-6 start, then the credit has to be given when credit is deserved. And the Dolphins deserve credit for their road performance in Atlanta on Sunday. It doesn't have to be anything more than that. This isn't us saying, as you pointed out, that they're going to go on a run and they're going to go to 11-6 and they're going to win and make the playoffs. And this isn't a time for I told you so's either. If you were somebody trying to be the glass half full person, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but like, Sunday was not at the same time, and I told you so game. It was
At
just
all, right.
it was just a really good performance by the Dolphins, and sometimes that's just what it is.
We're going to talk more about Tua's game. Are we buying that performance? Do we think he can put another performance like that on paper? Plus, Tua versus Lamar, what the history tells us. That's coming up on Game Day Uncensored. Again, we're live, FM 1043 WQAM. We're live on the Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube and Twitch. Appel, Dan Day, and Solana. More Game Day Uncensored next.
Every month.
fans on FM 104.3 WQAM.
Welcome back to Game Day Uncensored. Dolphins, Ravens, Thursday Night Football. Tua, Lamar, Hard Rock Stadium. Kickoff is at 8:15. We'll take you about up to close to kickoff. Heat play the Spurs tonight, so we'll end our pregame festivities a little early. We were talking about the Dolphins' victory over the Atlanta Falcons a week ago. For the most part, a shocking victory. Not that they won so much as how they won. And Tua Tagovailoa's game. Josh Appel is with me. Dan Day is with us as well. Appel, you said something in the previous segment, which I think a lot of Dolphins fans, including myself, were feeling after that Browns game, after the midweek controversies, Tua's run of just brutal press conferences. He calls out the team, player meetings, guys not showing up. We all know the deal. To see him go out and have that big game against Atlanta was shocking because you said, I thought that guy was gone. The guy who was able to have the 5-step drop and throw off his back foot with just perfect pinpoint accuracy. The guy who was really in tune with the offense, had command of the offense, who was throwing to his receivers and looking like the guy from 2023. And I wonder, how much we're buying that game compared to the Browns game, compared to the late drive in Buffalo, compared to the late drive against the New England Patriots.
Chargers.
What Tua, right, against the Chargers, what Tua should we be expecting in a game like tonight?
It's hard to say, right? Because the glass half full perspective is, all right, maybe this is him building back towards that. I know that this Ravens defense has been better the last few weeks, but maybe they're still a little bit vulnerable. Tua coming back home, good weather outside. Hopefully they're able to run the ball better. Maybe that sets him up for another performance similar to what we saw last week. But I don't want to make any huge declarations that this is the turning point for Tua because we've seen more up and down from him this season than we have seen what we saw on Sunday in Atlanta. I think that for everybody's mental health that follows this Dolphins team and talks about it all the time, whether it's on the air, with their friends, with their families, whatever. Everybody wants Tua to play well. I just don't know if last week was the one-off or if it's going to be something that he can keep building off of. I really don't. I think that's the unfortunate part now of where we are with Tua because, as we've talked about ad nauseum, it's one of the highest-paid quarterbacks in the league. The evaluation of how he plays is a lot different at $50+ million a year than it was prior to that. And when you're going into each week with a $50+ million quarterback, wondering what version am I going to get, that's sort of a problem.
There were these two narratives going into last week and kind of hovering for the past couple weeks. One was that Tua just mentally, and I kind of subscribed to this notion. I thought the pressure of this season, you pile on top of the fact that he had put together some of his worst performances of the season. Then he loses Tyreek Hill. Then he's the center of a national controversy calling out his teams. And then he has the Cleveland Browns game. I was genuinely wondering, aside from physical limitations, which I think there are plenty, which led to his bad games, whether it's the hip injury, he just didn't look like the same guy physically either. I was wondering, has the pressure kind of got to him? Like can he focus and be ready for a game and avoid another collapse like you saw in Cleveland with everything that's circulating around the team? Clearly, in my mind, a toxic environment, and Tua was kind of at the forefront of that. And then there was another question of, is there a rift between him and Mike McDaniel? These are two guys that are paired with one another at the hip, joint at the hip. And for the first time, we saw Tua perhaps throw Mike McDaniel under the bus a little bit in front of the media at the podium. And then Mike McDaniel come back a day later and not really feed his comments life, almost to say, I don't know what he's talking about. Like that doesn't involve me. It was the first time we felt like a rift between these two guys, and clearly they weren't on the same page in Cleveland. How much credit does Tua deserve? Again, he had a great game, and it's one game. We're not trying to to crown him, and we're not saying he's fully back, but how much credit does he deserve for overcoming both of those things? And I wonder if you still feel like that rift between him and McDaniel was probably a little overblown.
It's hard to say that he gets credit for overcoming an obstacle that he was 90% responsible for creating. Right. Yeah. So he's overcoming his own issues. I guess he does at least deserve a little bit, because it's a lot better than us sitting here talking about how it was another terrible game from him. And now we're really talking about seeing what they have in Quinn Ewers, or even worth looking at Zach Wilson. It's not. Is it worth that? But Tua had a performance worthy of what they're paying him last week. And, it's so interesting, this McDaniel-Tua relationship, right? It all started with McDaniel flying here and Tua being the first phone call. They put it out all over social media where McDaniel's like, I am going to help you, and you are good, and we're going to make you even better. And he built him all the way back up. And now to be sitting here in 2025 talking about, is there a rift between them? I wonder if it's possible, if this is just two guys who have worked very closely together for 4 seasons, and sometimes you butt heads. You'd like to see it happen privately, but it kind of happened a bit publicly. I don't know if it's just a matter of that, and they're able to work past it because they have been together for so long, and it's been a frustrating season, and all those things just came to a head, and you saw how it played out in the media. I don't know that there's necessarily a rift between the two of them, because they are joined at the hip, and if there is a rift, then they're probably both out of here.
It's true. It's not the first time Tua's been under a microscope going into a Thursday night football game against the Ravens. We all remember back in 2021, the last time these two teams met on Thursday night football, Tua wasn't even starting. Different head coach, totally different environment. And a former teammate of Tua, who's going to be on the broadcast tonight, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he kind of on his podcast was breaking down some of Tua's shortcomings. Let's hear what Fitzy had to say heading into tonight's Thursday night football game.
So here's the thing with Tua, that Tua's always been great at timing throws, rhythm throws, accuracy, anticipation. Those are like his elite traits. And I think what we've seen in the last few years, which is crazy, he's holding on to the ball a little bit more from 2 years ago, which was his best season, but his yards per attempt have gone down from 9 to 6 yards. You've got a less explosive offense and a guy that's holding on to it a little bit more. He knows what his superpowers are. And unfortunately, with his injuries and things, he went from a guy that hasn't been able to create great when you get outside the confines of the offense to really there's not a whole lot coming at all, because he's worried about staying on the field. He's worried about staying healthy and avoiding some of those big hits. So that's where the problem lies. If he's holding the ball for more than 2.5 seconds, it becomes a problem. But you see the greatness that's still in there. That touchdown to Waddle last week, go back and watch that throw and watch the anticipation when that ball leaves his hand, where he throws it, where Waddle is on the field when he throws that football. That's the magic of this offense, of the 49ers, is these catch and run throws. And I think, as people have seen exactly what you said, like, let's get this guy off his first read. Let's clog the middle of the field. Let's make him throw outside the numbers, that it's gotten more difficult for them. And so the big thing now is, how do they adjust?
Yeah, and it's a fair point that Fitzy's making. It's what we've talked about a ton, which was those bread and butter throws for Tua over his career, between 10 and 19 yards, right down the middle of the field. That's where he was at his best. And that throw to Jalen Waddle was like vintage Tua to Waddle. Tua was under duress. The offensive line did a good job at setting the pocket, but there was an edge rusher coming right at him. Just quick 3-4 step drop and just put it on the money. But to me, the more impressive throw, because he's talking about Tua getting out of the pocket, teams are more comfortable with that. We saw Tua on that second touchdown pass, first of Malik Washington's career, do something which I think I want to see more of, which is get out, use the play action, get out of the pocket, use his legs a little bit, and find somebody who's just darting across the middle of the field towards the boundary, towards the out of bounds area. And it was a dart. That was one of the more impressive throws, even to me, more so than the Jalen Waddle touchdown, that Malik Washington touchdown, because it's something we rarely see from Tua.
This offense has to give the defense something else to account for other than those throws over the middle. Last week, as you pointed out, Tua was able to throw a bit on the run a couple times, and also running the ball helps as successfully as they did. So when you give the defense another aspect or two to worry about, instead of just trying to take away the middle then opens up. And we saw the fruits of that. We've seen Tua miss that throw over the middle to Waddle on a number of occasions this year. The one of that sticks out to me most glaringly is, I think it was his first interception of the year in Indianapolis. They were driving down to score, and he airmails this ball over Jalen Waddle's head, or was it Tyreek?
I think it was Tyreek. But yeah,
regardless.
the point stands.
Yeah, that's the throw that we've seen him make consistently for so long. And as we pointed out, Sunday felt like the guy that we've seen in the past. And, I hope that for his sake, this is something that he can build off of. But it was just nice to see for one day because, again, we weren't sure if that version of Tua Tagovailoa was still even there.
We don't know what the deal is with him and his future. I've been somebody who doesn't think Tua, even at his absolute best, is good enough to go win you a Super Bowl. That's kind of been my take for quite some time. But Appel, the question of does he still have it? Like, is he cooked? I think gets thrown out the window because clearly he's still capable of putting a game like that together. Now, he's got to do that more. He's getting paid to do that every single week, and he's not. So don't get me wrong. I'm not throwing him a bone here. He's got to do that more. He's got to be consistent doing that. But I do think when you go back and you look at the game, you look at the fact that the Dolphins ran the ball better than they have all season, the fact that the offensive line graded out better as a unit than they did all season. Jonah Savaiinaya wasn't just getting pancaked constantly in this game and actually was able to hold his ground. All of those factors come into play as well. Like, I do think there's some context to some of these victories. And when all those things work, it's no surprise that it leads to Tua's best game also.
He's had such an odd season. He's tied for the third most starts in the league this year, finishing with a rating of over 110. And he's also got the most starts this season, finishing with below a 55 rating in 2025. And that's to the point earlier, we just don't know what version of Tua Tagovailoa we're going to get on a weekly basis. And that is not a good, as we said, it's not a good space to be in. And, I'm thinking back to that Thursday game in the Flores era where Jacoby Brissett started. Was there not an injury mystery around Tua Tagovailoa that week leading up to the game?
There was.
Whether
I think
or not
it was his hand. I
his
think
hand or his back, maybe something along those lines. And then he comes in and he throws a dart to Albert Wilson down the sideline, and we're like, what's really going on here? And I think that's when people started to really have it sink in that there was something going on between Brian Flores and Tua Tagovailoa. Let's hope that there's a repeat performance of that this week.
We'll look at that game and some of Tua's best games ever, which have come, or maybe his best game ever, which did come against the Baltimore Ravens. We'll look at that Tua versus Lamar history coming up on the other side. You're listening to Game Day Uncensored, brought to you by the Lexus TX. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. We'll dive into Tua versus Lamar a little bit further on the other side. Hour 2 of Game Day Uncensored. Dan Day, Josh Appel, Alejandro Solano here with you until right up before kickoff. You're listening to WQAM.
Hey, we want to hear what you have to say.
The lights are on in Miami Gardens. The nation's watching. And the Dolphins are playing Thursday night football against the Ravens tonight at Hard Rock Stadium. Both the Fins and the Ravens have been struggling this season. Not the usual Baltimore team this year. And we all know what kind of year the Dolphins have had. It'll be an interesting one tonight. Something's gotta give. We're going deep to put it all together.
It's time, game day, let's ride! It's time, do a full grind! It's heat, it's live, reppin' 305! It's war, it's now, Dolphins gon' slide!
This is Game Day Uncensored, the pregame show for real Miami football fans with Tobin, Solana, Omar Kelly, and Chris Perkins on FM 104.3 WQAM, Miami's sports leader.
Game Day Uncensored on FM 104.3 WQAM is brought to you by the Lexus TX. Room for all your passions in 3 rows of luxurious comfort. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. By Edmore Sawgrass Buick GMC. Catch massive savings on over 22 acres of new Buick and GMCs at Edmore Sawgrass Buick GMC. Get backed by Morse and visit EdmoreSawgrassBuickGMC.com. And by JM Lexus. JM Lexus has the best team in the business. A 4.8 Google rating with over 22,000 reviews and counting. JM Lexus, West Sample Road, Margate.
It's hour 2 of Game Day Uncensored as we get ready for the Dolphins Thursday night football against the Baltimore Ravens. Welcome back to WQAM as we have Dolphins, Ravens in prime time tonight. The only game on the docket in the NFL. Kicking off week 9. Josh Appel's filling in for Brendan Tobin. I'm Solana. Dan Day is with us as well. Game Day Uncensored, brought to you by the Lexus TX. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. Shout out to our program director, Len, and our production manager, Ed Nieves. That open ride, man. Like, there's a fire song mixed in there with the NFL Films voice. Like, that open, I think, sets the tone perfectly for a much-anticipated matchup between Lamar Jackson and Tua Tagovailoa. Omar Kelly's going to join us live at Hard Rock Stadium at 7 p.m. So if you're driving to the stadium or you're driving home, you'll listen to Omar Kelly. Chris Perkins from the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, Miami Dolphins columnist. He'll join us this hour in about 20 minutes. Really, a lot to talk about with Perk, including a couple notes that we've been seeing with the trade deadline just a couple days away. But if you're just joining us, let's reset here. Dolphins and Ravens have made some roster moves. I'll remind you what the Dolphins did. They have taken Jason Marshall and off IR and placed him on the 53-man roster. Barry Jackson of the Herald points out he replaces Storm Duck, who's out for the season. So kind of expected there, no surprise. And then your elevations for tonight, you have Isaiah Johnson and another tight end in the mix tonight for the Miami Dolphins with Hayden Rucci. And then the Ravens, they activated defensive tackle Taven Bryan and safety Keandre Jackson from the practice squad for tonight's game. So we're talking Tua Tagovailoa. We're going to get into the trade deadline and what could be the final game for some very notable Dolphins players. I saw a report just a few seconds ago from Adam Schefter regarding the Dolphins. David Fiones tweets out, ESPN's Adam Schefter, this could be the last game with the Dolphins for either starting edge rusher Bradley Chubb or Jalen Phillips, with the NFL trade deadline looming on Tuesday. But some conflicting reports, because we saw a report earlier today from Jeremy Fowler that the Dolphins aren't approaching this deadline as like, hey, the season's done and we want to move off from a ton of players. We'll get there in a second, Appel, because Tua career stats versus Baltimore, what the history tells us between Tua going up against Baltimore, what Lamar Jackson going up against the Dolphins, what we can kind of glean from it coming into today, if anything. But here's Tua's career stats against the Baltimore Ravens. He has a 2-1 record, 65% passing percentage, 288 passing yards per game is what he's averaging, 8 passing touchdowns to 4 interceptions, and a 102.1 passer ratings. And you can do a couple different looks at different Dolphins games, different Tua versus Baltimore Ravens games, and take your pick into which one you want to dive into. We can go back to that 2021 game, Thursday Night Football. Tua enters the game second quarter for Jacoby Brissett, and the Dolphins, they truly dominated the Ravens. But I think you go back to that game, what you really remember, sure, Tua coming in to the game, but to me, it was two things. It was the Dolphins just playing that zero coverage. You had Javon Holland as a rookie blitzing. You had Blitz Boy and Brandon Jones blitzing, and they just stifled the Ravens. They had Lamar Jackson shook in that game. And then the other thing you remember is that it was the greatest touchdown in NFL history that didn't count. Remember Robert Hunt steals a screen pass from Tua, and he dives into the end zone. He like acrobatically
somersaulted, flipped, whatever you want to call it. It was great.
Greatest touchdown that did not count in the NFL, even though I think he was technically down at the 1, but whatever. That play was effing awesome. Great replay. Ironically, the Fins enter that game off a win in Houston the week prior, which had ended a 7-game losing streak. And yes, it sparked that win paired with short week against Baltimore Thursday night, a 7-game win streak. And we all remember how that ends. Dolphins going to Tennessee. Tua is one of the worst games ever for a quarterback, literally. And the Dolphins end up missing the playoffs. But one of Tua's best games ever was against the Baltimore Ravens. Week 2, 2022. First year of Mike McDaniel. That massive comeback in Baltimore.
He's got Hill.
Was just like you saw it. For the first time, you truly saw, holy bleep, I think we had something here with Mike McDaniel, Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, the game-winning touchdown pass. Tua scrambles to his left, hits Jalen Waddle, and
the spin move out of the pocket.
Out of the pocket. You end up winning that game. The loss is I think more indicative of what you've seen since that game, since the Tennessee loss. That season in 2023, which was Dolphins get blown out 56-19 in Baltimore. But body of work, like you have that 2022 win where Tua's gone up against Lamar and looked like the better quarterback, especially late in the game.
But I think that the timing of those two games, as you pointed out, is a perfect encapsulation of the Mike McDaniel era. Week 2, the stakes aren't as high. It's a great comeback, all-time legendary performance by the Dolphins to come back to. It was obviously great. But then they need a win late in the season. They're still playing for a top seed in the AFC. This was after they had blown the game against Tennessee at home, but then rebounded with the win against Dallas. So there was some kind of momentum there. And then they laid an absolute egg. And then in classic Dolphins fashion, they don't just lose and get blown out. Bradley Chubb is still playing at the end of the game. He blows out his knee, and that's it for Bradley Chubb's season. And that was it for Bradley Chubb's 2024, it turned out as well. Look, when the Dolphins and the Ravens, when they match up, we don't know what they're going to get from Tua Tagovailoa, but I think we know what we're going to get from Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. The Ravens have averaged almost 41 points per game and almost 480 total yards per game in Lamar Jackson's 4 career starts against the Dolphins. That's both the most by any starting quarterback against a single opponent since 1950 with a minimum of 4 starts. And I don't know if rust will be a factor tonight, but all that to say, Lamar Jackson, aside from that Thursday night game, owns the Dolphins. We'll get into more on Lamar owning the Dolphins, plus his record all-time in return from injury games. But first, let's hear from Tua Tagovailoa reflecting on games versus Baltimore in his career.
Yeah, it's been fun. But then again, this is also the NFL. Anything can happen, and it's really about who's more dialed, if you will, with the game plan, with the scheme, who's been communicating, especially throughout these short weeks, right? These short weeks make it tough to where if you're not on it, you're going to get exposed on Thursday. So just got to make sure all our guys are on it. And yeah, I would just say this is just the NFL. Both could be true. Could be hard, could be easy, depending on how you look at it, depending on how you prepare.
I'd lean towards hard.
Yeah.
More so than easy. Look, just to kind of put a bow on the Tua discussion, I think we both agree, and Dan Day, you can chime in as well. We don't really know what we're going to get. It's just been too up and down. it's been this roller coaster ride. You're hoping it's more of what you saw against the Falcons. You're hoping it's more of what you saw in 2022 in that week 2 game. But Appel, you hit it on the head when you say when expectations are at their highest, this Dolphins team under Mike McDaniel hasn't delivered in those types of games. And I don't think there's like massive expectations going into tonight for the Dolphins. I think it's more on Lamar and Harbaugh and the Ravens. But, you know, historically, when the Dolphins play playoff caliber teams, Tua and this team don't come through.
No, Mike McDaniel has one of the worst records as a head coach against teams with winning records. I believe the only team worse against teams over 500 the last few years are the Carolina Panthers. I think they're something like 3-20 in their last 23 games against teams above 500. You can count on one hand, really, recently, their wins against teams of that caliber. We just talked about that Dallas game. That's the one that everybody that at least I pointed to in defending Tua Tagovailoa over the last couple of years. But I know I've repeated myself, but at the end of the day, when you are paying a guy $50+ million, it's not a great feeling to go in every week with a mystery of the type of performance that you're going to get from that guy. And I think that after all these years of, is he the guy? Is he not the guy? Oh, well, he led the league in passing for a season. He finally stayed healthy, and that was great. But if we're having this conversation in year 6, I think we have our answer as to what the ceiling is with this quarterback. But he's who the Dolphins have, and he, of course, has his shortcomings, but he's still a starter in the NFL. I mean, I don't think there's any argument with that. It's just the level of quality that he is. He's the guy the Dolphins have, and they're going to have to ride it out with him.
Dare I say, Dan, shades of Ryan Tannehill, which
different, the same but different.
Oh, man, I try not to dredge up the past. But look, this is the NFL. This is Thursday night. You can see a Dolphins team that comes together and starts to figure things out. You can see a Ravens team that big boys the Dolphins tonight, or you could see a combination of both, where both teams play really well. And maybe Baltimore says, I'm the hungrier team. We need this more. We're the Super Bowl contenders. Or you see the Dolphins finding a way to win at home. It's, to sit there and say it's an exact science, it's really, really hard. But I'm not going to compare Tua to anybody but Tua Tagovailoa right now for sake of just sanity.
And to Dan's credit, man, he was the only one who had the Dolphins beating the Falcons last week, and he hit it on the head.
Away, Dan.
The eternal optimist, Daniel Day, who's going to host Gameday Uncensored post-game show.
I do wonder, because you said something interesting. All of the focus nationally is on the Ravens. And how are the Ravens going to look? And how is Lamar Jackson going to look? Are they going to be able to climb out of this 2-5 hole? There have only been a handful of teams ever who have come back from a 1-5 start and made the postseason. So I wonder if the Dolphins somewhat flying under the radar into this game, if that plays into their favor at all, just psychologically.
You mentioned some of Lamar's numbers. He's been out the last 3 weeks. He's been dealing with an injury. He's 3-1 all time in return from injury games. But here's the caveat there. It's a good record, but he has a career 71 passer rating, just 6 passing touchdowns and 7 interceptions in those games. So yes, 3-1 record, been a part of some really good teams. He doesn't exactly will his team to victory in those games if you look at the numbers. So for people kind of expecting some rust tonight from Lamar, based on the fact that he's been out the past couple weeks, hasn't played in pretty much a month because missed 3 straight games. Plus, they had a bye week mixed in between there. They went 1-2 during that stretch. This could lead to a game where Lamar starts out slow just based on rust. Now, I'm not banking on it. I still think it's Lamar Jackson. I don't necessarily buy into those numbers. But again, historically speaking, he doesn't have his best overall games in these return from injury games.
Well, maybe tonight, because it's a Thursday, will play in his favor because he loves playing on Thursdays. 15 touchdowns and just 1 interception in his career on Thursday nights. Of course, the only loss was that game in 2021 against the Dolphins down here. But he's got the second best passer rating of all time on Thursday Night Football. The Dolphins, meanwhile, haven't fared so well on Thursday nights. Hopefully that changes tonight. But Tua Tagovailoa, as a starter, has never won on Thursday Night Football. They've averaged less than 16 points per game in those starts.
Prime time, especially Thursday night, I can think of a couple games. Buffalo, last season, Cincinnati, 2022, primetime Thursday night games, especially, haven't exactly been kind to the Dolphins.
There was a Green Bay Thanksgiving game too. That was last year. So,
I did the morning show after that game, and I just remember I took notes on my notes app the entire game, and there was a lot of stat padding there at the end for Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins, and that just kind of fed into that narrative of not only can they not compete with a top tier team, but it was on the road and it was in the cold. And it was every narrative crashing together for the Dolphins in that game.
Yeah, there's also a Green Bay Christmas Day game. We learned later Tua was concussed in that second half, which is quite possibly some of the worst interceptions we've ever seen him throw until he had a game against Cleveland.
It's still honestly, I didn't think he could top the Chargers lateral interception that was supposed to start the lateral play that never made it there. I didn't know he could top that, and then he had the interception in the end zone against Cleveland the following week. Hopefully that's out of his system now, because whoa.
Yeah, and coming out of the half against Cleveland where he throws a pick six, where he just overthrows him on HN. It was so Dolphins, where throws a pick six, you get a good return from D. Eskridge. Guess what? It's coming back, holding penalty, and that was Dolphins football. But again, tonight, Lamar, something to watch here. Is he going to be a little rusty? Let's hear from Lamar Jackson, South Floridian native, on just being excited to be back on the gridiron.
So, it's been, I think, about a month now, 3 games for you. How excited are you to get back on the field?
Extremely excited. Can't wait to touch the grass with my guys, man. Been a while.
There you go. Lamar Jackson, short and sweet from LJ. I want to touch on this a little bit because we're going to bring on Chris Perkins in the next segment, and we don't have too much time here, Pell, but as far as all these reports we're seeing, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, this could be their one of them, perhaps both. Again, I think, tonight kind of factors in, but Jeremy Fowler is, reporting that the Dolphins aren't exactly approaching this next week, the days leading up to the trade deadline, as a team that is going to press the panic button and fire sale and just revamp everything. And I know you and I have discussed it ad nauseum, where I don't feel comfortable with Chris Grier making these decisions. So that also kind of puts me in a spot where I don't know exactly what I want leading up to Tuesday's 4:00 trade deadline. But should today's game impact the decision from Grier, really from Stephen Ross, of how the Dolphins navigate the next 5 days?
How many times have we seen a Dolphins team? I mean, they've done it twice in the last 5-6 years, where they start 1-6, 1-7, 2-6, and they rally and they finish with a respectable record. They did it last year too. Tua obviously wasn't a part of that. I think that you're doing yourself a disservice as a general manager and as a front office if you are basing that type of decision off of one game.
Right.
If you're waiting to see whether or not you're 2-7 or 3-6, and that's going to be how you determine whether or not you're going to trade Bradley Chubb or Jalen Phillips or Minka Fitzpatrick or Matt or any of these guys, I think you're doing yourself a disservice as general manager, because it just seems like, and I would like to believe this is not the case, but it almost seems like there isn't a quote-unquote plan, that you're just kind of being reactive instead of proactive in trying to make things better. So I would hope that tonight is not the determining factor on whether or not. It's one thing if the Dolphins were right around 500, if they were 4-4, or if they were 3-5, and then they're like, all right, they get to 3-5 and they're 4-5 and they're right in the thick of the playoffs and we like some of the matchups coming up, then I could understand it. But you're staring at 2-6 right now, and you've got two teams above you in the division that have already both beaten you. I don't see the path here where a win tonight drastically changes the overall outlook on the season. So I would hope that they have a plan regardless of the result in tonight's game.
It's not even the record for me. It's just watching the game.
Right, right.
This era is just, it's not where you need it to be.
But that's what I'm saying. You have more evidence that this is just not going to work anymore.
Year 4 of McDaniel, year 7 at Chris Grier. I put more of the onus of where the Dolphins are at on Chris Grier, the general manager, especially with how they came into the season. Clearly just way too shorthanded in a certain number of spots, relying on rookies to fill these massive gaps. And it was malpractice by the general manager again in year 7. But we'll talk more about it coming up in the next segment. Chris Perkins from the South Florida Sun Sentinel, Miami Dolphins columnist. He should be at Hard Rock Stadium already. Dolphins, Ravens, Thursday Night Football, Game Day Uncensored with Chris Perkins next.
WQAM, broadcasting live from the Ed
the pregame show for real Miami football fans on FM 104.3 WQAM.
Welcome back to Game Day Uncensored, right here on FM 104.3 WQAM, Miami sports leader. Dolphins play the Ravens Thursday night football, prime time. And we welcome in Chris Perkins, Miami Dolphins columnist for the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Perk, what are the vibes like ahead of tonight's game? Dolphins coming off a win. I don't call it a big win, but I call it a good win against the Atlanta Falcons. Overall vibe check going into tonight's game.
Cautiously optimistic because nobody knows what Dolphins team to expect tonight, right? I mean, what we saw last week was the team that I thought that was going to win 9 games this season. We might have gotten a glimpse of that team also against Buffalo in that 31-21 loss, but that's the only 2 times this season that team has shown up. So we'll see what we get tonight.
Can Tua Tagovailoa replicate what he did on Sunday against the Falcons, tonight against a Ravens defense that got off to a horrific start this year, but has turned it around as they've gotten healthier the last few weeks?
Yeah, Josh, the big thing to me is, can Mike McDaniel give Tua the help that he gave him last week? And you had the run game. You had sticking with the run. You had 3 different running backs. You had Daniel Brunskill in there playing some tight end. So I think things like that make Tua's life easier go a long way toward helping Tua. Remember, there's no Tyreek, there's no Darren Waller, so there's a lot more pressure on Tua. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to see 20 of 26 for 4 touchdowns and no interceptions, but if you make Tua's life easier, you're going to get a better version of Tua. So I think just as much of it is on Mike McDaniel as is on Tua tonight. If Mike sticks to what we saw last week, and it was opponent specific, so who knows how much we're going to see Brunskill, but the running backs and the 3 runners and making, just kind of sticking with the run, the commitment to the run. If we see that, I think we see a good version of Tua tonight.
Yeah, we all loved, and again, we're talking with Chris Perkins, read his work, Sun Sentinel, South Florida Sun Sentinel, sunsentinel.com. We all love Brunskill. He had those 22 snaps against Atlanta.
Love him.
15 came as a 6th lineman, Perk. But it wasn't like he was in there the entire game. You still had the Dolphins being able to incorporate not only Devon Achane, who had another big game, but Ollie Gordon. We even saw Jalen Wright get in on the action. Is that sustainable? I mean, sure, if Brunskill's out there or whoever it ends up being as the 6th lineman, but the Ravens are prepared for it, right? Like, is that sustainable? Can you replicate that against anybody?
I think some version of it is sustainable. And really, I think some version of what we saw last week is sustainable from the Dolphins because nobody did anything out of this world, right? Now, Tua did have the 4 touchdowns and no interceptions, but we've seen that a couple of times. That is out of this world. Let's not pretend like that's routine. But nobody rushed for 100. Jalen Waddle, 5 receptions for 99 yards. That's great, but that's not out of this world. Jordan Brooks with the 10 tackles, 3 for losses. That's great, but that's not out of this world. These performances are repeatable from many of the Dolphins that we saw. Kenneth Grant, Jonas Abai-Naya, all of these guys. These performances are repeatable, and so that's what I'm looking for tonight is the things that you can repeat. Do you repeat them again? Tua with 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. Okay, I'm not necessarily looking for that. But I'm looking for Mike McDaniel to make Tua's life easier. And look, and on defense, what Anthony Weaver had been telling us, we saw last week that they need all these guys to trust the guy next to you. They need them to believe that if you do your 111th, the guy next to you will do his 111th. And then if you tackle the ball carrier as opposed to trying to punch the ball out, you'll get a better result. All of those things are repeatable. It's just whether the Dolphins actually do it like that. That's the big thing tonight.
Perk, I wanted to ask you about the Dolphins defense because last week I know that the Falcons started a shell of Kirk Cousins. I know they didn't have Drake London. And you knew that Bijan Robinson was going to be the go-to guy, and the Dolphins shut him down. Robinson only had 9 carries. They held him under 3 yards per rush. Now you've got a returning Lamar Jackson. You've got Derrick Henry, who after 3 or 4 straight weeks of looking like a shell of himself, he's starting to put it together again at over 100 yards against the Rams, had a couple of touchdowns last week against Chicago. How can the Dolphins defense stop Lamar and Derrick Henry? Oh, and hey, by the way, there's Zay Flowers, there's Mark Andrews, there's Rashad Bateman out there too.
Yeah, well, you know what? They have to play disciplined football. They have to play their brand of football. And really, when I say their brand of football, it is what they showed last week. The big play is not as big a part of their game as it used to be, right? When Tyreek and Waddle were out there together. You have to be patient on offense. You have to pick your spots. Don't force the ball downfield. And then as far as stopping Lamar and let's just say controlling Lamar and controlling Derrick Henry, again, do your 111 and trust that the guy next to you is going to do his 111. And I think that's really the key. There's no big miracle here for the Dolphins. There's no big secret here. You do your job and see what happens. Coming into this game, I think everybody would agree that Baltimore is the better team because they're healthy now. But the Dolphins are at home. Under Mike McDaniel, they're 19-9 at home, which I think is like 67 or 68% winning percentage. So I think if they are reasonably patient and they do what they need to do, they have a decent chance. Now, I did pick Baltimore 24-20, but but I do think that I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I would be mildly surprised if we saw a blowout here tonight.
All right, so you got the Dolphins covering, Perk. Then
there you go.
Yeah, you got the Dolphins covering it. And in terms of Lamar returning, we were reading his stats earlier in these return from injury games. He's 3-1 overall, but his numbers haven't been excellent. And Derrick Henry, look, I mean, he's still one of the best, most imposing running backs in the NFL. But who should the Dolphins prioritize tonight in terms of trying to shut them down? Like, do you expect the Ravens to just put Lamar Jackson 5 wide and let him cook and try to get back into rhythm here on Thursday night in his first game back in over a month? Or do you expect them to just hand the ball off to Derrick Henry and say, hey, Dolphins haven't shown they can stop the running back consistently, so here we go. He's going to cook.
I think Derrick Henry is the priority because the Dolphins' run defense has been so bad. Now, Lamar is going to be geeked up because he's at home and he's making his injury comeback. But I think stopping Derrick Henry and trying to make the Ravens one-dimensional should be the priority there. Look, Zay Flowers also making his homecoming, right? He went to university school. But so he's going to be fired up, and I'm expecting some good things from him, especially with the Dolphins situation at cornerback, or in the secondary, I could say, with Storm Duck being out, and then Kendall Sheffield, who got some burn last week, he's out. Ashton Davis has the quad, so it is going to be a injury-shortened secondary. So I expect that Zay Flowers is going to be able to do some things. But Derrick Henry, man, that's where it all starts, because if he gets it going, the Dolphins are in serious, serious trouble.
Perk, trade deadline coming up. Is tonight the final time we see Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, or any other Dolphins playing in this uniform?
Bradley Chubb is my choice. I don't know what the Dolphins are going to do at the trade deadline, but he's the one who I would think would go for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's the guy who has shown other NFL teams that he can do something for you. He's been to the Pro Bowl. He's had double-digit sack seasons. Jalen Phillips has not been to a Pro Bowl. He's in his fifth-year option, so he'll need a contract unless you want to just rent Jalen Phillips. And then, Jalen is coming off a back-to-back injury season. So I'm not sure that the demand for him is going to be that big. I think it's probably really going to be the demand for Bradley Chubb. And then the other guys, I'm not sure that there's a big market for, maybe Rasul Douglas, there's a market for him. But for a lot of these other guys, and I don't think H.N. or Jalen Waddle are going anywhere. But a lot of these other guys, I don't think they're going to go anywhere. So I don't think there's a big worry for guys such as Matthew Judon and guys like that. I mean, I don't know if other teams are really looking for those guys.
I mean, we'll give Matthew Judon to whoever at this point, Perk. I mean, I mean, whoever. I mean, a bag of chips. Perk, I'll leave you with this one. should tonight's game impact any of those decisions?
Probably not. No, because,
Okay.
Either way, and I heard Josh earlier, and I agree, I don't think a victory tonight means you're poised to make a playoff run. It just means that you've won back-to-back games, and maybe you're putting something together. But, I don't think that this is a case of like last year where Calais Campbell, they kind of talked him out of wanting to go somewhere else and, thinking they were going to put something together. I don't think there's that same feeling around this team. I mean, Tyreek Hill is not walking through that door. So, unfortunately, at this point, I think the playoff hopes are gone, but, or suspended. So, we'll see if that stays true. I think it will. But I really think that, the big thing tonight, by the way, I'll say this also, this is the third time in the McDaniel era that they've played Baltimore and Buffalo back to back. They did it in 2022. They did it in 2023. So, that it's a back-to-back.
The NFL's out to get the Dolphins, is what I'm hearing.
That's it. I think so.
Chris Perkins, Miami Dolphins columnist, read his work, especially throughout the game and after the game, sunsentinel.com. Perk, we appreciate you and enjoy Thursday Night Football.
All right, guys, we'll talk next week.
Yes, sir. That's Chris Perkins there. Always appreciate him joining us on Game Day Uncensored. Omar Kelly from the Miami Herald, Miami Dolphins columnist, will join us coming up in about an hour and a half. Appel, Dan Day, and Solana, we take you up until 7:45. It's Dolphins, Ravens, Thursday Night Football. More Game Day Uncensored next.
Every Miami Hurricanes football game can be heard here. FM 104.3 WQAM.
Sponsored by Kendall Toyota. Kendall Toyota is all about the you. All for you and all at Kendall Toyota on US 1. Call 305-KENDALL. Sponsored by Doral Kia. At Doral Kia, choose from over 500 new Kia models in inventory, like Sportage, Sorento, and Telluride. Remember, when it comes to Kia, the great deals are at Doral Kia. By Hatfield. Better care, better pork. Head to simplyhatfield.com to find a retail location near you.
Puka, Bella, I'm sure you've noticed some changes.
Who are you talking to?
I'm just practicing for when I have to tell the dogs about the twins. Because they'll...
Be fine in the spacious third row seat.
But the twins...
Can sleep peacefully thanks to the rear manual sunshade.
And what about the...
Extra cargo space for strollers and dog beds?
I guess you're right.
Can we go to the hospital now? The contractions are getting closer.
The three-row Lexus TX. Because everyone should feel like the center of the universe. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
Before all the weekend's big football games, listen to Against the Spread Sports Handicapping Show with Kevin Todd and Randy Rosenblum, the #1 sports handicapper. They turn outcomes into incomes. Against the Spread every Sunday at 8:30 a.m. on FM 104.3 Sports WQAM and live on the Odyssey app.
Hi, Joe Zagacki here for Williamson Cadillac. Get the most out of the South Florida lifestyle in a new Cadillac from Williamson Cadillac. New models are arriving daily at Williamson. This means Williamson Cadillac is sure to have the new vehicle you're looking for. The CT4, CT5, XT5, XT6, and the new all-electric Lyriq. Get the most out of the South Florida lifestyle in a new Cadillac from your luxury dealership located on US 1 just south of the Palmetto. Williamson Cadillac. Williamson is Miami.
Attention. Have you racked up $10,000 or more in credit card debt? Are you barely getting by making minimum payments? With credit card debt reaching all-time highs, National Debt Relief is notifying consumers about significant debt relief options currently being made available to help those with overwhelming credit card debt. These options may reduce a large portion of credit card debt for those who qualify. You don't need to declare bankruptcy or take out a consolidation loan, and you may only have to pay back a fraction of what you owe, even if you have bad credit. National Debt Relief has already reduced the credit card debt for more than 550,000 consumers. So don't wait. If you owe $10,000, $20,000, or even $100,000 in credit card debt, you can now take advantage of this financial debt relief as the cost of living continues to skyrocket. To check what debt reduction you may qualify for, call 800-894-7722. That's 800-894-7722. Again, 894-7722.
During the Drive in the Fall event at Rob Lambden's University Dodge, Florida's #1 volume Ram truck dealer. Save up to $20,000 off new Ram 1500 light-duty pickups between Griffin and Sterling on University Drive or universitydodge.com.
More than a few of our patients have talked to me about their first time, but it's not the first time you're probably thinking about. It's the first time that erectile dysfunction ruined the moment. This is Jeff for the Atlantic Men's Clinic, and if you're over 50, it's likely that you've had that first time yourself. But the good news is that if you're like most men, that first time can be the last time that ED impacts your sex life. At the Atlantic Men's Clinic, we're experts in treating ED. We've treated tens of thousands of men using protocols with success rates well over 90%. And those treatments have, in most cases, made sex great again for both them and their partners. You could even find that you're performing like you haven't in years. So if ED has been affecting your intimacy, it's time to make the last time that happens the last time that happens. Your initial visit includes blood work, a medical consult, and if medically advised, a test dose. Call 877-455-7300 or go to atlanticmensclinic.com. We have 7 offices across South Florida to serve you, including our new office in Hollywood, Florida.
The Kendall Toyota Model Year-End Sales Event. Get their lowest price on the best-selling, affordably friendly new 2025 Toyota Corollas with huge model year-end savings. Sharp looks, ultra reliability, and the smartest tech. The new Corolla has it all. See thousands on used cars up to 50% off the original selling price. 100% credit approval is their goal. Best value, fast service, friendly staff. It's all at Kendall Toyota on US 1. #1 in the 305 since 1969. Call 305-KENDALL.
Sports fans, we like big roofs and we cannot lie. And so does Party Peter from Perfect Choice Roofing. This isn't your average roofer. Party Peter and the crew bring the skill, speed, and style to keep your home protected. Get your instant estimate in just 30 seconds for free at roofhotline.com. See your roof options before you even pick up the phone. From small repairs to full re-roofs, Perfect Choice Roofing has you covered. That's roofhotline.com, where big roofs get the big win.
Chevy trucks have you covered when the road takes you from smooth sailing to Chevy Colorado will eat up some of the toughest terrains with 5 available drive modes. And Silverado and Silverado HD have the muscle to take you out for some serious with multiple engine options and impressive towing. While Silverado EV is the perfect combo of performance and capability, making it a snap to hitch up this electric truck and hit the road. Wherever the road leads, Chevy trucks are right there with you. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
At Straight Talk, we know the holidays are your time to say
yes.
So why put up with a wireless company that makes you say
out of data?
Or
no service here?
Switch to Straight Talk and say yes to real unlimited data on a reliable 5G network covered by Verizon. And with a free 5G phone when you activate select plans, someone else in your family can say yes! Available.
Time now for more Game Day Uncensored, the pregame show for real Miami football fans on FM 104.3 WQAM.
Game Day Uncensored rolls on. Welcome back to FM 104.3 WQAM, Miami's sports leader. Josh Appel, Dan Day, I am Alejandro Solana. Will take you up for a couple more hours. Omar Kelly will join us at the top of the 7 o'clock hour. Tonight's kickoff is at 8:15 at Hard Rock Stadium. This segment is what we call echolocation. We play our favorite sounds of the week and short week. So we're going to talk about Tua becoming Visor Tua. Let's get that big open for echolocation.
It's time for echolocation.
That is how Dolphins communicate.
It's okay to be called out as long as you change your behavior.
What's 1,000 yards if it's not like a winning season?
They talk, we do.
Echolocation.
Send it in.
Tobin and I, Appel, we get a good laugh at the "they talk, we do" from Bradley Chubb there, because that was like the motto coming into the season. And here you are, Thursday Night Football, the toughest stretch of your season, where you play Baltimore, the Buffalo Bills, and then you have to go to Madrid, first ever game in Spain in the NFL, and play the Commanders, who I know don't look great right now, but I expect their quarterback to be back by then. And they talk, we do, just doesn't hit the same.
They talk, we do. 2-6.
So going into the game against the Falcons, about 2 hours before kickoff, Tua's on the field, and all of a sudden, our friend Houts puts up this video, and he zooms in on Tua's face, and Tua's eye is just massive. And we don't know if, he has a black eye or if his eye is just flat out swollen. Does he have pink eye? We don't really know what happened, but Tua plays with a visor for the first time in his career, and he had one of the best performances of his career, certainly in the past 2 seasons. So Tua tells us that, I think I'm going to keep the visor.
Yeah, I think the guys like the visor, so I'll stick with the visor.
When it's fully healed?
Yeah.
Did you learn any more that you care to share about why that happened?
We don't know why it happened. Yeah, don't know why it happened.
Anybody buying that?
No
Anybody
chance.
buying that Tua
No
doesn't
chance.
know how he woke up with a swollen eye? I mean, his eye, to be fair, it was hard to tell from the angles. His eye didn't look red. Like, I've had pink eye before. I hate to admit that, but I have had pink eye before. It didn't look like pink eye, but I guess unless you got like a real close-up, you couldn't know for sure. It was definitely swollen, though, Dan.
Yeah, and you have a team full of doctors. Oh, you stumped us. I don't know what happened. Nothing.
I did love the eye patch celebration
Oh,
during the
so
game.
good.
It
Cupped
was
his
cool.
eye, yeah.
It really was. Now, I wonder, does playing with only being able to see out of one eye to make it concentrate a little harder, see things a little better? Is that possible?
Well, maybe. Maybe you're onto something there. So Tua plays with the visor, he cups his eye, gives us the eye patch celebration. The whole team is rallying around it. And then he shows up to the podium after the game with sunglasses on. Heady play there by Tua Tagovailoa. And
Because nobody saw it on the sideline during the game.
This was him after explaining why he wore the visor and then explaining his choice to wear sunglasses.
Yeah, the visor was strictly to protect, and then the glasses after the game, my eye just looked terrible, so I didn't want to,
It's adorable. He's adorable. That laugh.
The laugh kills me.
Yeah. Have you ever heard a more guilty laugh?
There's the likable Tua.
Winning cures all, man.
Yeah.
Winning cures all. And he's not lying. The team loved the visor look from Tua. Here's a combination. Patrick Paul, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips. Everybody bought into visor Tua.
We might have to keep the visor. The visor was tough, right? Swag went through the roof. Swag is through the roof. I know his eye wasn't feeling the best, but the visor added a lot of swag, and, we're just going to keep that going. I'm excited for how things are going with this team right now. We just got to keep this energy going.
Whatever he's got to do to feel great and perform great is what he should do. So if he's got to go 2 gloves out there, if he's got to wear a long stringy towel, it doesn't matter to me as long as he plays good.
That's that next level swag for Tua. I need that every week.
Next level swag. There is something swaggy about wearing a visor as a quarterback.
I always, when I played Madden when I was younger, I would always put the tinted visor.
Always.
Oh, speaking of tinted visor, Ricky Williams and the tinted visor. Now
so good,
there's a great visor player.
So good. I don't think the Dolphins are wearing throwbacks tonight.
They're not.
Kind of disappointed about that. I got to be honest. I know a lot of people don't care about the uniforms or whatever. I do. I buy into all that crap. And Thursday night, prime time.
They play better in them.
They play better. Other than last year's Thursday night game against Buffalo. Maybe that had to do with why they're not playing with the throwbacks, but there's something special about the Dolphins because I just hate the whole new logo. It's not even new anymore. They've been using it for like 12 years now. I just think they torched maybe the most iconic brand in the NFL, certainly one of the most iconic brands in the NFL. They ran it into the mud. Pretty much what Stephen Ross has done with this organization, but bring out the throwbacks Thursday night, Tua, visor, throwback unis. It's just there
Bob Greasy didn't play with a visor. Earl Morrall spits on a visor. Are you kidding me?
Lamar wears a visor.
Could you imagine Larry Zonka wearing a visor? Please.
Well, bring back the big neck braces.
Now a neck roll.
Yeah, the fully caged face masks, or just like the
one
bar.
bar.
The
Oh, the
one
one
bar.
bar.
Oh. Football used to be fun, man. What happened to that stuff?
I saw Larry's Hawkeye highlight recently, and obviously he's a Hall of Famer. He's incredible. But the speed at which this guy was running down the field, it's so funny to me.
But he could just throw punches.
Oh, yeah.
At players. I was watching a highlight the other day where he's running down the sideline and he literally just threw a bow at an opposing DB, broke his jaw, and he got flagged for it. And Shula was thrilled with the fact that he broke the dude's jaw.
It's one of the best stories from Dolphins lore that I've ever heard is Zonka retelling that story and Shula like off to the side, like being upset about getting the penalty, but also like, hey, nice job.
Yeah, job well done. That is echolocation, our sounds of the week. Expect a visored up Tua Tagovailoa tonight on the field. Can the Dolphins replicate what we saw in Atlanta? It's going to come down to the run game in large part. We'll talk about that. Dolphins incorporating all three running backs. Jonas Savaiinaia having his best game as the Dolphin. That's 6 offensive linemen. How the Ravens are preparing for it. All that and more coming up. It's Game Day Uncensored on WQAM.
The lights are on in Miami Gardens. The nation's watching. And the Dolphins are playing Thursday night football against the Ravens tonight at Hard Rock Stadium. Both the Fins and the Ravens have been struggling this season. Not the usual Baltimore team this year. And we all know what kind of year the Dolphins have had. It'll be an interesting one tonight. Something's gotta give. We're going deep to put it all together.
It's time, game day, let's ride! It's time, do a full grind. It's heat, it's live, reppin' 305. It's war, it's now, Dolphins gon' slide.
This is Game Day, Uncensored, the pregame show for real Miami football fans with Tobin, Solana, Omar Kelly, and Chris Perkins on FM 104.3 WQAM, Miami's sports leader.
Game Day Uncensored on FM 104.3 WQAM is brought to you by the Lexus TX. Room for all your passions in 3 rows of luxurious comfort. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. By Edmore Sawgrass Buick GMC. Catch massive savings on over 22 acres of new Buick and GMCs at Edmore Sawgrass Buick GMC. Get backed by Morse and visit EdmoreSawgrassBuickGMC.com. And by JM Lexus. JM Lexus has the best team in the business. A 4.8 Google rating with over 22,000 reviews and counting. JM Lexus, West Sample Road, Margate.
Hour 3 of Game Day Uncensored rolls on as the Dolphins look to shock the world. Does that sound right? Nobody's expecting this team to win. Has the line moved at all, Paul? I haven't looked in the past hour.
I'll look right now.
The Dolphins, 8-point dogs, 8-point home dogs tonight, hosting the Baltimore Ravens.
Down to 7.5 on the Hard Rock.
7.5.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's shifting a little bit. It was 7.5 last night. This morning, Dolphins were then 8-point dogs, now back down to 7.5. So a little bit of action coming in on the Miami Dolphins. 7.5. I mean, home dogs by a full touchdown is a lot.
Yeah, and we talked about it earlier. Tua Tagovailoa as a 6-point underdog or more as a starter is 7-0-1 in his career. Both games that they were 6-point or more underdogs this season, the Dolphins covered. But then you juxtapose that with their history on Thursday Night Football and Lamar Jackson's success on Thursday Night Football and against the Dolphins. I don't really know how to approach this from a betting standpoint. This feels like if I was an unbiased wagerer, that it's a system play. Home team getting that many points, you ride it out and play the percentages.
I'm just looking here on social media. You've got the aqua painted end zones tonight.
Does that mean they're wearing aqua jerseys?
I would imagine so. Yeah, they're probably going to wear aqua jerseys. I saw the Ravens pregame kind of like rundown was sent out. Looks like they'll be in all white. There is a vibe, whether or not the Dolphins stink, and they do. Okay, they're coming off one good win against Atlanta. We've covered that already. I don't think anybody is giving them a big chance to win this game. We all think Baltimore's better, and none of us are really getting too bought into one win against Atlanta. You win this one, and then you beat Buffalo, then hey, maybe you're like, what do we have here? But we're a ways away from that scenario. I mean, a ways away from that scenario, because even if they win tonight, Appel, you've got Buffalo on the other side. Josh Allen is 15-2 all time, or 13-2 all time against the Dolphins in 15 games. Like that's the one where if we're trying to lay out some sort of scenario, and I'm not suggesting this is going to happen, but if you're trying to lay out some sort of scenario with the most optimistic Dolphins fans out there going to the game saying, hey, you win this one, and then you beat Buffalo, then would you maybe buy in to the Dolphins turning the season around?
I think you could start to discuss it, but I think that if you are trying to turn around your season, having Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Jaden Daniels staying in your way before the bye week, Daniels in another continent, I don't know how how great the chances are of that, but you got to start with tonight. And the Dolphins, if they hold their opponents to 20 or fewer, they're 23-2 under Mike McDaniel, including last week. Can they do that against this Baltimore offense? Will we see a rusty Lamar Jackson? Or will we see a guy who has won MVP multiple times? Will we see the Derrick Henry who rushed for fewer than 50 yards in 3 or 4 straight games before a couple of bounce-back games? Or will we see that version? Or the one from week 1 against Buffalo that ran for 1,000,000 yards and his 2 fumbles? I just don't know what to expect from either side. Is the Ravens' defense and their turnaround, is it real? They were very good in the red zone last week, keeping Chicago out of it. I think at the end of the game, turned it over on downs. Chicago had to settle for a couple of 30-something yard field goals for their first points of the game. This is a team that was last in the league weeks 1 through 5, giving up 35 points per game. Now they've bounced back 17 and 16 respectively the last 2 weeks. So from both sides, it's really a mystery on what you're going to get. Now, we talk so much about, can the Dolphins keep Tua upright? Can they keep him clean? Is he going to take a lot of hits? The Ravens have not been good at rushing the passer this season, and that might be another situation where the Dolphins can exploit when they're on offense.
Josh Appel, play-by-play broadcaster for the NFL for Sports USA. He's filling in for Brendan Tobin today. Tobin will be back with us next week on Gameday Uncensored. My larger point was, no matter what the situation, no matter what the record is for the Dolphins, primetime game, end zones painted in aqua, there's always a fun vibe at Hard Rock Stadium, right? Like it's
a good atmosphere.
It's a great atmosphere.
If at the end of the first quarter it's not great, then it's not so much of an atmosphere.
Last couple times, by the way, that the Dolphins have played a home game, we saw banners flying above the stadium. First, it was Fire Greer McDaniel. Then it was Fire Everybody, basically cut to whatever the banners were saying. It was clean house. I wonder, people are showing up already. I saw Tua Tagovailoa out on the field going through his pregame routine. We got the Chris Perkins picture who joined us a few minutes ago with Tua out there getting to work already. So I wonder, what the vibe will be like. We saw the Boo Birds coming out by the home crowd if you get off to a slow start. And if coming off a victory, are there still banners?
Has a banner ever worked?
Yeah.
Has it?
Maybe not with Stephen Ross, the most patient man on earth. But I think banners have worked.
Not down here.
Well, I don't know. I remember Al Golden banners flying.
Okay.
And it took
Dolphins.
a 67-0 loss or whatever the hell the
58-0
score was.
to Hawk famously on ESPN the day after that.
Yeah. So the thing is, Stephen Ross clearly, I joke when I say the most patient man on earth, but there's a semblance of truth to that.
Yeah, he's a very loyal guy, and by all accounts, Chris Greer is someone who's very well liked in the Dolphins organization. Mike McDaniel, very likable in that building. Stephen Ross, after going through what he did with Brian Flores and how difficult it was to work with him, reportedly, it seems like he wanted something that was way more collaborative, and they have found that in this current regime. Unfortunately, that hasn't really translated to much on-field success outside of 2023.
Yeah, collaboration above success. That is the Stephen Ross mantra since he's been here. What worked in Atlanta? I want to dive in a little bit deeper. Gameday Uncensored is brought to you by the Lexus TX. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. It was the Dolphins implementing all 3 running backs versus Atlanta. The Dolphins bringing in an extra fat guy, 6 offensive linemen. I don't know why you're laughing about that. I mean, we loved what Brunskill did the other day, did we not?
It just sounded like you said we love Daniel Brunskill. I was like,
yeah, I don't love Daniel Brunskill. I don't love Larry Borum. I don't love
I will say
anybody other than Patrick Paul in this offensive line. Connor Williams deserves some love.
Larry Borum. Well, Connor Williams not here anymore. Aaron Brewer.
Oh my God! Wow.
I was going to say,
not the first time I've done that.
I dogged Larry Borum at the beginning of the season, and he had some plays where you were like, "Hey, this is where they're trotting out there at right tackle." And quite honestly, he's been better than I thought. I think in general, aside from Jonah at left guard, the offensive line has not been as horrible as maybe I was expecting, given the injuries that they have. But to your point, I mean, Patrick Paul at left tackle, the Dolphins have their guy at that position for the foreseeable future.
For sure.
And Aaron Brewer is a quality center. We talked about it earlier this week. It's not a sexy position. You don't talk about the center a lot unless he's really bad. And Aaron Brewer has been really, really solid and then some for Miami, or Connor Williams.
Cole Strange, Larry Borum to the right. Again, not the first time I've done that. But no joke, Aaron Brewer has been very solid. And if you're not talking about the center, that's good news, because speaking of Connor Williams, there were some snap exchange issues between him and Tua Tagovailoa, which led us to talk about that, especially in key moments of big games. But you bring in Daniel Brunskill. We were reading the stats earlier, but he played 22 offensive snaps, and then 15 of which the Miami Dolphins found some success. They had him in there as that 6th offensive lineman. But what it led to was Devon Achane continuing to be the best option for Miami. Another big game for him. Achane reached the 30 touchdown mark faster than any player in Dolphins history. That was 36 games. And I was reading in the Miami Herald, one of only 9 players in the NFL to score 30 touchdowns from scrimmage since he entered the league in 2023. His 774 yards ranked 6th in the NFL this year. It was Achane or bust for this Miami Dolphins offense. But you implement this new wrinkle into the pass protection, into the run game, run blocking scheme, and Ollie Gordon gets 10 carries, which was a career high. He gets the touchdown screen pass as well, gets into the end zone. That was fun. Jalen Wright, finally active for a couple straight weeks, 9 carries on 11 snaps. He had some success. Also, you would imagine that the Dolphins want to continue implementing all 3 running backs and establishing the run game right from the get-go tonight.
That's how they're going to be able to keep the ball out of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry's hands, is by chewing up clock and running the football successfully. And obviously, they were able to do that against Atlanta on Sunday, but they've also got the short passing game to Devon Achane, the screen game, which is an extension of their running game, which has had success over the course of Mike McDaniel's tenure with the Dolphins. I mean, Devon Achane, the production that he's provided Miami, he is their entire offense. And that's why I never really understood any of the noise coming up towards the trade deadline about Devon Achane. Like, I'm not certain there really is a price that I could see the Dolphins being like, you know what, I would even consider that. Like, I don't know that trade package exists for a guy like Devon Achane, who has been this team's best player. I think you could argue not just this year, but even last year as well.
I don't think it was ever realistic that they would move on from him this season, but I think if it got really bad, and 1-6 was pretty bad coming off the Cleveland loss, but if they were approaching this game at 1-7 and they had lost this game, they're 1-8. I mean, you're pretty much in the pits of hell at that point. You kind of start looking at your team and saying, who are our building blocks? And while Devon Achane is clearly a building block, you know that building an organization from the ground up, you don't tend to throw a lot of money at a running back. No. And I think that has to cross your mind when you're talking about, hey, is there a ton of value here that we can get in return for Devon Achane, which is, I think, my only question, where do the Dolphins value their future? What players, what positions? And I don't think running back could be at the top of that. But contrary to that point, there's a lot of teams in the NFL that are wildly successful paying running backs and having that elite run game. The Philadelphia Eagles are the best example, not the only one, but the best example. They just won a Super Bowl based on one of the greatest individual running seasons we've ever seen in Saquon Barkley.
I mean, Derrick Henry had a very similar season to Saquon Barkley last year, and not that he was ever really having down years in Tennessee, but he helped, along with Saquon and Christian McCaffrey and guys like that, kind of reset the running back market and be like, hey, this position can change games and can bring your offense to a new level. But then there's the flip side of a team like Carolina, who paid Chuba Hubbard. And all of a sudden, Rico Dowdle, who they signed a one-year deal with in the offseason, has essentially taken over as their number one back. So I look at Devon Achane, and I see how they're utilizing him and how many touches he has and how many hits he's taking. And to me, that screams we're going to squeeze every ounce of juice out of this player until his rookie contract is up. And I don't know if they'll decide, whether it's Chris Greer, I can't imagine it will be, but if it's Chris Greer making that decision or whoever the new GM is, because it almost feels like there'll be a passing of the torch eventually. Not that Ollie Gordon can do all the things that Devon Achane is capable of. But when a team is riding a guy like HN or in general a running back like that, especially at his physical build, I'm not sure the longevity of that after the next couple of seasons. So they're going to try and get as much out of him while they can.
And when you're looking at building blocks, just kind of going back into that discussion, we mentioned Patrick Paul. You're hoping it's going to be who else on the offensive and defensive line? Jonas Savat-Inaya. We just haven't seen enough yet to firmly say, hey, this guy has a legitimate the legitimate potential to be what the Dolphins envision, which is the guy directly next to Patrick Paul. He's coming off one solid performance, his best performance, but body of work, it's been very, very underwhelming. And don't forget the Dolphins traded up for him. On the other side of the ball, you're hoping that, okay, you just paid Zach Sealer. He's your captain. He's your leader on the defense. Jordan Brooks is having a wildly unbelievable season. And then it's Kenneth Grant, who you signed or drafted, rather, in that first round, who you were hoping was going to come in and make an immediate impact. That's kind of been a slow roll to get things going. And then you look at edge rushers, everybody's saying Chubb and JP are on the chopping block here ahead of the deadline. Chop Robinson, speaking of the chopping block, no pun intended, he was supposed to be a building block, and it's kind of been a not so great year for Chop so far.
That has been a real disappointment this season because we saw his ability as a pass rusher the second half of last season. He was productive. He was getting to the quarterback every single game, and I just don't feel like we have seen that type of explosiveness. And I know he dealt with some injuries at times as well, but I figured that getting Bradley Chubb back, getting Jalen Phillips back, and the thought of having those three guys potentially on the field at the same time, then you add, and this is before the season, now we know how it's worked out, but then you add a guy like Matthew Judon to the equation. You figure, all right, like there's a group of four guys here at pass rusher that a lot of other teams would look at and say, wow, like that's an intimidating group. But those top two guys coming off of major injuries. And while they've been, in Chubb's case specifically, solid this year, he's still making a ton of money. And I don't know that he still has that same explosiveness, Jalen Phillips as well, that they had maybe last year or pre-injury, I should say. It's, I was thinking about this earlier as we talk about Bradley Chubb and the trade rumors surrounding him. I remember doing the show when the Dolphins at the trade deadline acquired him in 2022, thinking, wow, this team is really going for it. It's really cool. And we always use the perspective of the Denver game, how Denver has lapped the Dolphins now after losing 70-20. In 3 years, the Dolphins have gone from, all right, Bradley Chubb is the missing piece, not just for this season, but moving forward as we try and win now. 3 years later, it's, all right, are we going to trade him at the deadline because we're in a lost season? It really is crazy how quickly this window shut for this team. And we're seeing what that looks like now.
Yeah, but I always felt like that window was 2022, 2023.
Oh, yeah.
And when the wheels kind of fell off in that Baltimore game, you lose the division to Buffalo, obviously the Tennessee game, which was a nightmare, and then the talent gap, in my opinion. I know there's injuries, like there's a lot of context that goes into play, but the talent gap, the disparity in that playoff game against Kansas City should have been the eye-opener. And instead, the Dolphins doubled down on everything, start handing out a ton of contracts, and here you are 2 seasons later, following another major injury or major setback to Tua Tagovailoa's ability to stay on the field. And one of the guys you paid in Tyreek Hill's not available due to injury. Another guy you paid in Jalen Ramsey didn't even want to be here anymore because he saw the writing on the wall. That window was closed, shut, and the Dolphins' leadership brass just didn't see it.
And now they're left trying to pick up the pieces with the second fewest cap space in the NFL and a big contract at quarterback going into this offseason. Whoever is the new GM, if there is one, is going to have their work cut out for them. New coach, if there is one as well.
Going back to the Dolphins establishing the run with 3 separate ball carriers, here was Mike McDaniel after the game on using all 3 running backs and the value of it.
I think the biggest upside is the different ball carriers defenders have to tackle. I think that's an underrated. You have a little change up in just body makeup, size, conviction, It's a different target. It's a different in-hole speed. It's a different tackle. That in combination with having, the player with the ball in his hands, being as fresh as he can possibly be. I think you get a lot of bang for your buck if you're able to distribute the ball amongst all of your eligibles, specifically your running backs.
And we were talking about the Dolphins bringing in that 6 offensive linemen, how the Ravens, nobody's sneaking one by Harbaugh and the Ravens or anybody in the NFL. Harbaugh was asked this week about it, and he says, yeah, we expect the Dolphins to use 6 offensive linemen against us.
Well, I'm sure they'll do it. They put number 64 at the center. He's out there blocking and does a real nice job, real athletic guy. We noticed that they did lean into that, and it helped their run game quite a bit. So, yeah, we've seen it before. It's something we definitely have to contend with, especially if we're in lighter group.
Somebody writes in our chat, that McDaniel soundbite was succinct for him. I told you, man, you win a game, and all of a sudden, even McDaniel sounds less McRamblin-y. So, going back to Bradley Chubb, there's a lot of different reports right now that this could be the final game, whether it's Chubb, whether it's Jalen Phillips. We heard Chris Perkins say Chubb would be his pick if the Dolphins were going to move on from one of these pass rushers. And we're talking about Chop Robinson. And I was looking for this tweet while we were having the conversation because it was something that really stood out to me from Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald. Adam Schefter had, I don't want to say reported, but he was just giving his opinion. He said, I think the Dolphins will move at least one of their pass rushers, Jalen Phillips or Bradley Chubb. It's what he told the Pat McAfee show. And Barry Jackson responds to that from the Miami Herald, and he says, this was Adam's opinion, an educated one, but not a report. Phillips is impending unrestricted free agent. Chubb has no guaranteed money left after this year. While Chop was not complaining, he writes, he told me last week when I asked him that it's easier for him as a pass rusher with more snaps to get into a rhythm. And it goes back to our discussion of, hey, it's not about tearing it down, but it's about finding, truthfully, by the time next year winds up happening, you know what you have in some of these young guys. I think the same can be said about Savai Unaya. Is he really ready to take this amount of snaps, this load on the offensive line? Probably not, but the Dolphins have to know, hey, do we actually have something here? Or is he going to end up being somebody you move on from? Kenneth Grant, kind of the same thing. Yeah. And Chop Robinson, to me, also plays into that entire argument where if you do move on from some of these guys, sure, you're looking ahead in terms of what can you get in return, capital. You're probably not going to bring them back next season because you're not going to be shelling out a ton of money. But also, you got to get Chop more snaps. You got to figure out, hey, can we really rely on this guy moving forward?
Well, that's what coincided with his second half of the season last year is he just was out there all the time and got better and better and better the more he was out there. And I think there is something to be said about that. But at the same time, you're going to rotate him when Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips are healthy. And that's why, we look at this on paper before the season thinking, all right, the secondary might not be great, but at least they got Minka back there. At least they got Ashton Davis and Melifano, just guys who have a history of being productive NFL players. Look at the front seven. How can this front seven not be at least solid for this defense? And it's been anything but that. And I agree with you. There are too many draft picks on this roster that you're still doing is there some we could still be doing that with Austin Jackson. When Austin Jackson's out there, he turned himself in from an unplayable right tackle, left tackle as well at times, into a really good player, but he's never on the field. They have too many of those. We don't know what we have. And I think that's part of why, that is why they've struggled to compete while they're in this cap crunch, because you've got to be able to find players in the margins. And outside of a guy here and there, they really haven't been able to do that.
We're about 30 minutes, maybe a little less, from finding out the Dolphins inactives, the Ravens inactives for this game. Omar Kelly from the Miami Herald is going to join us. We'll check in with Omar coming up in about 30 minutes. We're going to dive deeper into the matchup. Dolphins, Ravens coming up next. What we can expect from the Harbaugh-led Baltimore team. Game Day Uncensored rolls on after this.
WQAM broadcasting live from the Ed Moore Sawgrass Auto Mall studio.
M1043 WQAM.
Dolphins versus Ravens, Thursday night football, night before Halloween. Welcome back to Game Day Uncensored. As we get ready for Tua versus Lamar. Lamar Jackson returns to South Florida, where he's from. A lot of storylines heading into this game. Dolphins are 7.5-point home dogs tonight. I'm watching video of Lamar Jackson arriving at Hard Rock Stadium, shaking some hands. And I saw a video of Tua where the Dolphins just posted showing up to Hard Rock Stadium and alongside former Dolphin Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Fitzy.
That's interesting to me. Like, they seem to have a good relationship, and Fitz does opine a lot on Tua. We played one of his cuts from his podcast earlier. And it's funny because their relationship ended a bit controversial here in South Florida when he was with the Dolphins, because if you remember the season Tua was a rookie, Ryan Fitzpatrick leads this team to a big win, and before a bye week, I think the Dolphins were 3-2 at that point. I don't remember the exact record, but we find out that Brian Flores clearly, begrudgingly, removes Ryan Fitzpatrick from the starting position and will insert Tua Tagovailoa against that game against the LA Rams. And that was the start of the Tua era. And Fitzy was clearly upset that he felt like he had his team stripped from him.
But I think that Fitzpatrick was always aware enough to realize this was not a problem between he and Tua.
Right.
This was a Brian Flores situation. And I would imagine his angst was more directed in that direction as opposed to towards Tua Tagovailoa. And look, have you seen a single person ever say something negative about Ryan Fitzpatrick personally?
Yes.
Personally.
Well, you haven't listened to Brennan Tobin a lot clearly on our midday show, because Tobin...
I meant from folks who played with him.
No, everybody loves Ryan Fitzpatrick, but, you know, Tobin's whole take is that it's the beard. The beard mesmerizes people. If he didn't have the beard, he wouldn't be on Thursday Night Football. He would have been out of the NFL much sooner than he really was. The whole Tampa Bay Buccaneers...
It was the
Monday
press
Night
conference.
Football game, shows up to the press conference. He's got the scruffy beard. All of a sudden, he's wearing this, like, this wild button-down T-shirt. All the buttons are opened up. He's got the hamburger meat flowing. He's got the big chain. And America fell in love with Ryan Fitzpatrick that night.
Yeah, for sure. And he was a fun Dolphin. I mean, the Raider game where his neck is being, or basically he's being decapitated, and he throws a dime to Mac Hollins or whoever it was.
It was Mac Hollins.
Yeah. He's had some legendary moments, but like I said, I think that his beef here probably more directed at Brian Flores than at Tua Tagovailoa, because Tua's not making the decision to
he moped a little bit though. Come
mope,
on,
schmope.
he moped a little bit.
Well, I probably would mope too if I were him. But but my point is, I'm not surprised. I think it's cool that they still have this type of relationship when they see each other. I don't know how much they talk outside of that, but I think Ryan Fitzpatrick has a unique ability to be able to talk about Tua's situation and lend a lot of insight to it that obviously a lot of other folks who are in media don't have. He was in the room.
Confirmed, by the way, the Dolphins have posted a picture of what they will be sporting tonight. The unis, the threads, they've got the aqua tops, the white bottoms with the traditional Dolphins white helmet. You'll have the end zones painted in aqua tonight with the Hurricanes off to Dallas to play SMU this week. No overlap there, so you get the vibes going well at Hard Rock Stadium. As far as their matchup tonight, you got John Harbaugh kind of on the hot seat right now from a lot of what I'm reading in Baltimore. I don't think anybody necessarily, like some fans might be doing that, right? But I don't think there's anybody truthfully calling for his job yet. But overall, they're 2-5. They're third place in the AFC North, and they're coming off a victory, had a bye week prior, but their losses are to Buffalo, Detroit, Kansas City. Those are the games Lamar Jackson played in. I know he was banged up against Kansas City, certainly at the end. And then without Lamar, they lose to Houston and they lose to the LA Rams. Expectations coming into the season, Super Bowl contenders. And I know it's easy to say, hey, their 3 losses with Lamar are to other Super Bowl caliber teams, right? Buffalo, Detroit, Kansas City. But I think where that pressure for Harbaugh comes are those losses, because they're not supposed to be saying, hey, well, we're losing to Super Bowl caliber teams. The other teams are supposed to be saying, well, we're losing to the Ravens. They're one of the contenders. They're one of the favorites to go win the Super Bowl. And I get they lose Lamar, but at 2-5, you've had an MVP caliber quarterback in Lamar for a while. I see where the rumblings of hot seat come for John Harbaugh.
But remember, I feel like the tenure is very similar to Andy Reid in Philadelphia. Obviously, Harbaugh has the Super Bowl that Reid did not with the Eagles, but it gets to a certain point when you've been the longest tenured head coach in the league, aside from Mike Tomlin, where you just kind of grow apart, right? It's not that Harbaugh forgot how to coach, or Andy Reid in that situation obviously forgot how to coach. She's had one of the best runs in the history of the league since moving to Kansas City. So I just think sometimes things and relationships kind of wear out. And we might be heading in that direction with John Harbaugh and the Ravens, because not only are they losing in these big games in the playoffs, but they're like excruciating losses. I don't know how much you can it's not his fault that Mark Andrews had a crucial drop against the Bills a year ago. It's not his fault that sometimes Lamar Jackson turns into a pumpkin in the postseason, but he is the head coach.
A pumpkin?
Hey, he turned into a pumpkin. You never heard that?
Halloween reference, or
that's just a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it turned into a pumpkin.
Never heard that.
Isn't that, I think, isn't that Cinderella coded? Because the carriage turns back into a pumpkin.
How are you going to use an analogy you don't even know where
I know what it means. I don't know where it's from.
No, but to your point, Derrick Henry this season, week 1, they have a sizable lead against Buffalo. And Buffalo does what Buffalo does. They come back, they make it a game. Derrick Henry fumbles the football in their own territory. You give Josh Allen the ball to go win the game.
And Derrick Henry
Harbaugh's fault.
Derrick Henry never fumbles
until he did it again against the Detroit Lions.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I really have a hard time believing that they would fire Harbaugh unless this got really ugly. I just don't think it's going to get really ugly for them. But you can make a similar comparison to the Buffalo Bills. Hey, man, you've got Josh Allen, generational talent. You're winning the AFC every single year, AFC East, that is, every single year. At some point, I get you're going up against Patrick Mahomes, but if he can't lead you there again after 7 seasons, you do understand the pressure of, well, maybe you do have to make a change to go find somebody else who can get you over the hump.
So you bring up Sean McDermott. Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator there, is going to be a head coaching candidate this offseason. If the Bills fall short of a Super Bowl again, maybe there's a scenario where McDermott gets let go and Brady gets promoted because that's Josh Allen's guy, and they try and run it with Joe Brady as head coach. I don't know. It's a really good comparison to Harbaugh and the Ravens. It's just when you go this long, having a ton of success, it becomes, we know you're a good coach, but you can't get this team over the hump. It's been a long time since John Harbaugh has won anything of significance in the playoffs. Same thing for Mike Tomlin. There's still that noise around Mike Tomlin where, they're in the playoffs every year, but what are they doing once they get there? They haven't won anything in over a decade. And so you have these examples where you might be moving on from a good coach, whether that's a good decision or a bad decision, but sometimes the welcome gets worn out and it's just time for a new voice when it gets to a certain point. And I wonder if the Ravens are potentially heading in that direction. This is such a huge and pivotal game for them because, again, their schedule from here is not very difficult. They are still the favorites to win the AFC North. If they don't, and they miss the playoffs this year, I could see a scenario where John Harbaugh is not the coach of the Ravens next season.
And Mike Tomlin can at least use the crutch of, since Big Ben, look at my laundry list of quarterbacks outside of Aaron Rodgers, even though kind of a shell of Aaron Rodgers at this point, it's been really ugly. Harbaugh can't use that excuse. He's had an MVP for quite some time. And to your point about them still being the favorites to win their division, a loss tonight actually puts the Dolphins ahead of the Ravens in the chase for a wild card position, which is just ridiculous to think about. We'll talk a little bit more about how the Dolphins defense can try to hold Lamar, Derrick Henry, and the plethora of weapons that the Ravens have at their disposal. We'll talk more about that coming up in the next segment. We'll hear from Anthony Weaver as well. Dolphins inactives should be coming out shortly, plus Omar Kelly still ahead. This is Game Day Uncensored on WQAM.
This hurricane season, keep it on 101.
Time now for more Game Day Uncensored, the pregame show for real Miami football fans on FM 1043 WQAM.
Welcome back to Game Day Uncensored. Dolphins, Ravens coming up tonight, Thursday night football at Hard Rock Stadium, 8:15 kickoff. We just got our inactives for the Miami Dolphins, and it's interesting to say the least. They're brought to you by Edmore Sawgrass Auto Mall, and man, I'm kind of struggling here because we talk so much about the Dolphins implementing that three-headed, I don't want to call it monster, but, the three running backs.
Say it, it's a monster.
And Jalen Wright, third time in the last 4 games, inactive for this game. The good news is you will have Bradley Chubb available. He had told us he was going to play, so it's not a surprise, but Bradley Chubb is good to go. And then some of the other guys who were questionable, Ife Melifonwu is good to go. D. Eskridge, he's active as well. But here are your inactives. Jalen Wright, Quinn Ewers, safety Ashton Davis, Juju Brents, Jordan Colbert, Julian Hill, no surprise there, and Zeke Biggers are all inactive for the game. We haven't even gotten into the backup quarterback situation, which was,
what was the point of that?
Apparently answered. Zach Wilson, Quinn Ewers battled it out. It was Zach Wilson last week, and McDaniel said there would be no changes there. So I guess Zach has regained the upper hand on Quinn Ewers.
I wonder if there's more to the lead up to the Browns game, if something happened, because otherwise, what was the point of any of that?
Makes no sense, man. Makes no sense. But no Jalen Wright tonight for the Miami Dolphins, and no Ashton Davis either. He is confirmed out. Trying to see here, the Ravens have released who's in and who's out, and they have Jair Alexander out for the Ravens. Emory Jones is out. Tackle Carson Vincent is out. Devontae Walker, wide receiver, out. Anus Peebles out. And their emergency third quarterback, Cooper Rush.
Aeneas
is the emergency third quarterback. That's what I said. Actives and actives brought to you by JM Lexus. JM Lexus has the best team in the business. A 4.8 Google rating with over 22,000 reviews and counting. JM Lexus, West Sample Road, Margate. Any big takeaways, Appel, other than Aeneas? About the Dolphins' inactive report?
Yeah, Jalen Wright, very surprised. And it kind of throws out the first hour and a half of the show where we talked about how they got all 3 guys going. Mike McDaniel talked about it this week, how it gives the defenses.
Well, we played, and the only reason why I wanted to focus on it was because we played the sound from McDaniel where he genuinely, gave you some quality insight into the value of all 3 being available, all 3 being incorporated. So
bizarre.
Just kind of a head scratcher. I'm not saying it's the difference between winning or losing this game, but it just is a head scratcher considering how well it worked last week.
But I mean, I guess it falls into, we just talked about the backup quarterback situation. Then there's the mystery around all the hype around Willie Gay in the preseason and in training camp, and then him barely getting any defensive snaps. They do this in so many different situations, and this is just another example. To go from it gives the defenses a different style of player to have to bring down, and that's something that is not talked about and underrated, to he's inactive. It's just bizarre. I wonder, I can't tell from just who the inactives are, but I wonder who is active in his place instead. Maybe that an extra DB because Storm Duck's out. I don't know, but it is bizarre. We'll ask Omar about it.
Yeah, Omar Kelly is going to join us in the next hour. We still have to get to our porpoise props. We'll predict the game ball. Final hour of Game Day Uncensored is coming up after this break.
Every Miami Hurricane
The lights are on in Miami Gardens. The nation's watching. And the Dolphins are playing Thursday night football against the Ravens tonight at Hard Rock Stadium. Both the Fins and the Ravens have been struggling this season. Not the usual Baltimore team this year. And we all know what kind of year the Dolphins have had. It'll be an interesting one tonight. Something's gotta give. We're going deep to put it all together.
It's time, game day, let's ride. It's time do a full grind. It's heat, it's live, reppin' 305. It's war, it's now, Dolphins gon' slide.
This is Game Day Uncensored, the pregame show for real Miami football fans with Tobin, Solana, Omar Kelly, and Chris Perkins on FM 104.3 WQAM, Miami's sports leader.
Game Day Uncensored on FM 104.3 WQAM is brought to you by the Lexus TX. Room for all your passions in 3 rows of luxurious comfort. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. By Edmore Sawgrass Buick GMC. Catch massive savings on over 22 acres of new Buick and GMCs at Edmore Sawgrass Buick GMC. Get backed by Morse and visit EdmoreSawgrassBuickGMC.com. And by JM Lexus. JM Lexus has the best team in the business. A 4.8 Google rating with over 22,000 reviews and counting. JM Lexus, West Sample Road, Margate.
Final hour of Game Day Uncensored. Welcome back to FM 104.3 WQAM. Game Day Uncensored. We get you ready for the Dolphins every single week. Tonight, Thursday Night Football, Dolphins, Ravens. Game Day Uncensored brought to you by the Lexus TX. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. Brendan Tobin is not with us today, so Josh Appel's done a fantastic job stepping in. We got Dan Day, who's going to host Game Day Uncensored post-game show on the other side, producing for us tonight. I'm Alejandro Solana. Now we head out to Hard Rock Stadium. This is the part of the show where Omar Kelly joins us, Miami Herald Dolphins columnist, live from Hard Rock. Omar, let's start right here. We kind of talked up the Dolphins having that 3 running back look, which worked pretty well against the Atlanta Falcons. And we played Mike McDaniel talking about the value to having all 3 guys out there. And then about 15 minutes ago, we're reading the inactives. And what do you know? Jalen Wright inactive. What do you take from that?
I really don't think it's necessary to have him active. I think you've got 2 talented backs in Devon A-Chain. Then you've got Ollie Gordon. They both give you something different. Now, the only concern I have is if what happens if both go down. But sometimes you have to make tough decisions about the active roster. And right now it's going to be Taj Washington. And Taj Washington is playing over, Jalen Wright. To me, Taj Washington is one of those missing elements of the receiving core because he can make you miss. Nobody else on this roster can make you miss, can shake and bake you in terms of receivers or skill set players. They're all different, but Taj Washington gives you what Tyreek Hill would give you. Now, I'm not saying he's as fast as Tyreek Hill. I'm not saying he's as talented as Tyreek Hill, but he does bring that shake and bake, and that's an element that this offense needs.
Omar, last week, the Dolphins defense had their best performance of the season going up against Bijan Robinson. I know that Kirk Cousins was playing quarterback for the Falcons. I know that Drake London was out. But how can this defense build off of that against Lamar, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, and the crew that Baltimore brings in?
Josh, they have been talking and working towards getting playing as a collective unit. Everybody playing in this as on a string. One person move and then the other person comes into that gap. They had not been playing collective football, and Atlanta was the first time you actually saw it. Now, the question is, were they just slow learners? Was that an aberration? I don't necessarily. Was it a byproduct of Atlanta not having many weapons that can challenge the Dolphins defense, even though everybody in the world had been challenging the Dolphins defense? It was a step in the right direction against arguably a top 5 back in the NFL. Now, the question is, that back has a different style. This back is going to beat you down like he's a sledgehammer, and it's going to wear you down. And I don't know if they have, especially when every team's game plan and strategy was to attack the tackles, the defensive tackles, go right at them. Baltimore, plays a very physical style of football. Miami has never matched up well with it since I've been covering this team, probably 18 years. Maybe Tony Sperano's team were the only team that actually matched up well against the physical style of football that the Baltimore Ravens play. So I don't expect it to be pretty. I do expect Derrick Henry to eventually to beat them down with 4-yard carries and then eventually break a big one. I do think Lamar Jackson, if the hamstring is healthy, is going to be scrambling around. And even if he does stay in the pocket, I think the threat of Lamar Jackson is going to force you to play a different defense.
So, Omar, for the Dolphins to compete, A or B, win this football game, and you're saying it has to be ugly for them, right? This has to be a game where the Ravens are struggling against the Dolphins defense and Miami's kind of just sticking with them. I mean, you're not imagining a scenario where the Dolphins are winning in a shootout, are you?
This is a team that has a very small margin for error. If they don't beat themselves, they can play with anybody. Not really, but they can play with a lot of good teams. If they don't beat themselves, if they don't shoot themselves in the foot with penalties or with missed assignments or with, what Tua's complaining about it, not knowing where we're supposed to line up and be in the right formation, and Tua having to direct traffic and things like that. But that's going to be hard to do in a Thursday night game because you didn't practice all week. You walk through the plays. You haven't worked on the plays. Thursday night games are supposed to be where you're playing your division opponent, you're doing your bread and butter, just get through the game. This is a situation where the Dolphins can't do that because neither can the Ravens, but you're not playing a regular opponent. You're not playing the Jets or the Patriots, opponent. This is a completely different Thursday night game than you'll see on the slate most Thursday nights. That's why they make it a division opponent, because you don't have time to prepare for it. You don't have time to install new plays. But we'll see. I think based on what I've seen in training camp, there's a lot of good stuff that the Dolphins still have that they haven't utilized. Why? I don't know. But I think there's a possibility that they can unleash some of that. Like the Taj Washington, I think they've got a 5-package play for Taj Washington. They've got a 5-package play for Ollie Gordon. And I think you'll see a little bit more of those things.
Omar, are you buying this turnaround by the Ravens defense? They did this last year as well, where they were one of the worst defenses in the league for the first half of the season, and they were the complete opposite of that, closing out the final 8 or so games. I know this year they've had a ton of injuries on that side of the ball, and their last couple of games they've been better, but they're still near the bottom of the league in getting pressure on the quarterback. It feels like it's another decent matchup offensively for the Dolphins against this defense. I know you talk about Taj Washington, but how else do you think this Dolphins offense can kind of exploit what Baltimore's defense has struggled with this year?
I really think the Dolphins need to be effective running the ball. That's where Baltimore is probably at their worst. John Jenkins, who we had down here for a couple of years, like 5 years ago, he was, just getting by 5 years ago. Imagine where he is now. This is Roquan Smith is just coming back from an injury. Kyle Van Noy, we had him in 2000. This is 5 years later. Kyle Hamilton's battling an injury. Marlon Humphrey was battling an injury. So they're getting healthier, I think, but they're also a young team that I think they're rebuilding on the fly. And they had like a lot of young undrafted players that made the team. And when you're the Baltimore Ravens, you invest in those players and then they eventually become something. When you're Miami Dolphins, you invest in those players and they don't become anything. But that's a totally different subject. You invest in those players and they become something. And I think this is the year that they're going to invest in some of the young players to make another run in probably 2 or 3 years.
We're talking with Omar Kelly, Miami Herald columnist, covers the Dolphins. He's at Hard Rock Stadium ahead of tonight's game. Omar, if you had to guess, is this the last game we would see Bradley Chubb, maybe Jalen Phillips in a Dolphins uniform ahead of the deadline on Tuesday?
It has to be for the right price. For me, I'm not trading Jalen Phillips for anything less than a fourth. And I would be willing to do that because no matter what, I'm going to have my shot at him in free agency in the offseason when the season is over. So I'll take a fourth for letting you borrow him. If I really want him back, I can bid on him. Bradley Chubb, you know what the situation is. He's going to be cut at the end of the year or shaken down just like he was this year. I have a hard time believing he's going to want to be shaken down, considering he's probably the leading sack guy on this team, arguably one of the best defensive players. He's been a good leader. Maybe I trade him for a fifth, but realistically, if you're a team out there and you could choose between Calais Campbell and Bradley Chubb for a fifth-round pick, I think I'm going with Calais Campbell. So this is, it really comes down to how many teams are buying pass rushers. And I think the market is really closed right now.
Omar, Tua Tagovailoa this season has top 5 amount of starts this year with a passer rating over 110. He's also got the most starts below a 55 rating in 2025. How do you explain this? What do you expect from him tonight? Because obviously against Atlanta, that was the best we've seen him in probably since 2023.
Josh, I'm going to ask you this question. I want your honest and candid answer. Which you know the 110 player, you know the below 50 player. Which one do you think is the norm?
I feel like this season, the one we've seen more of is closer to the 55 rating guy. But on the whole in his career, he's closer to the other.
Yeah, you've seen. You're now looking at year 6. We're talking about if he becomes a 100-rated passer this season, he will join company of Steve Young and Aaron Rodgers as the only players in NFL history to ever do it 4 straight years. Tua is an accurate passer. He's nearly completing 70% of his passes. He's efficient when he gets into the red zone. The only unfortunate thing is he's fragile and he turns the ball over in bunches. Now, does he look different than he's looked every other year? Yes. And my question to Dolphins fan is, why is that? Think about it a little bit. Do you feel comfortable in that pocket when sometimes you see these plays, the ball is snapped and there's a defender two steps away from Tua ready to cream him? The pocket is compromised. When they went to the 6 offensive linemen, I've been begging them to do that going back to last year. When they went to the 6 offensive linemen, it gave him more time. It gave him more protection. And you can't operate like Tua if your timing gets thrown off because there's a defender in your face every second. And that's where the interior of the offensive line has to get better. Now, James Daniel and Austin Jackson will eventually come back at some point, probably after the bye or maybe, in Madrid. But until then, they got to hold it down, and the offense has to evolve without Tyreek Hill, which is another issue. Who is going to step up other than Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle? Okay, last week was Ollie Gordon, but how about a receiver? How about a tight end?
I was ready to buy in on Visor Tua, Omar, because he sold me on Visor Tua, but then I saw him hobnobbing with that bearded man, Ryan Fitzpatrick, before the game. I mean, get out of here with Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Do you still have a beef with Ryan Fitzpatrick?
I was saying the same thing to him earlier.
Get out of here with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Why is he doesn't get enough TV time? He's on every stupid commercial. I mean, Omar, it's just the beard. You know it is.
It's the beard. It's the shirt. It's the whole style. It's so. I'm a fan of Fitz. He's just got a personality that's so charismatic. Now, it's a personality that rubs you the wrong way, but it makes it. I believe if you all were in each other's presence, you'd love him. He'd win you over if you guys were in each other's presence. Trust me.
Omar, will the Dolphins be able to get it done tonight? I know I'm kind of asking you the cliche pick a winner tonight, but in your heart of hearts, do you genuinely believe this is a game that the Dolphins, they can build momentum from last week, short week? Nobody's really expecting them to win. Can they get this done?
Yeah. They can if they play a very disciplined style of football, and if Lamar Jackson isn't Lamar Jackson. I will say this. The Baltimore Ravens to me are Debo from the movie Friday. They're very scary. They're very intimidating. And a lot of times you see this Dolphins team quiver when a team comes in with that attitude and that mentality. Now, will this Dolphins team respond? I don't know. So, they've been Heckle and Jekyll the whole season. So no, not really, just really Jekyll. I don't know if they're going to, if they show you and play a clean game like they played in Atlanta. Like, people don't realize, I expected what you saw from Atlanta this season, but the Dolphins defense has been nowhere near that. Now, if they can get back and be be a top 10 defense, which is unrealistic, but if they play like a top 10 defense the rest of the way, I think they'll have a very good chance to win games. Now, produce a winning record, that's kind of unrealistic, but win games and get you to that 7-win season that Dolphin fans hate so much.
But should they want the 7 wins? Like, what at this point? Like, what's the point of the 7 wins? I know you just kind of alluded to it, but
yeah. You know what, Josh? I was a board chairman for the Tank for Tua campaign. I started the season with it. I wrote it out even after the injury, and I learned a very valuable lesson in that. Just like winning is a culture that you create, losing is also a culture that you create. And it's been very hard to get that loser mentality out of this team's bloodstream, and they need a complete transfusion. And so I would never again encourage anybody in this franchise to tank games to go get a player, no matter who that player is, because the habits that you create when you're a loser are very difficult to shed.
Omar Kelly, read his work, MiamiHerald.com, especially after tonight's game. Omar, we appreciate you. We'll talk to you next week.
I guess.
Thanks, Omar.
There you go. Omar Kelly. And by the way, he kind of gave you your keys to the game, a clean, very clean game, plus establish that run game. And Tua has got to be Tua Tagovailoa. Keys to the game brought to you by Edmore Sawgrass Auto Mall. Shop exceptional Cadillac offers now at the 3-time Cadillac Dealer of the Year, Edmore Sawgrass Cadillac. Visit EdmoreSawgrassCadillac.com. You're always backed by Ed Morse. Still ahead, Porpoise Props will predict the game ball and more on Game Day Uncensored after this.
Every Miami Hurricanes football game can be heard here. FM 104.3 WQAM.
Sponsored by JM Lexus. JM Lexus has the best team in the business. A 4.8 Google rating and over 22,000 reviews and counting. JM Lexus, West Sample Road, Margate. Bayou Health. University of Miami Sports Medicine Institute's experts use the precision of academic medicine to help every athlete recover their game. Visit uhealthsports.com. By Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Call 1-800-747-FREE. That's 1-800-747-3733. And brought to you by Williamson Cadillac. Experience the South Florida lifestyle in a new Cadillac from Miami's luxury dealership, Williamson Cadillac. Williamson is Miami.
WQAM, broadcasting live from the Edmore Sawgrass Auto Mall Studios. Shop massive savings on a massive Chevy inventory, all backed by Morse at Edmore Sawgrass Chevrolet. Visit EdmoreSawgrassChevrolet.com. Chevy, find new roads.
Hi, Joe Zgacki here for Williamson Cadillac. Get the most out of the South Florida lifestyle in a new Cadillac from Williamson Cadillac. New models are arriving daily at Williamson. This means Williamson Cadillac is sure to have the new vehicle you're looking for. The CT4, CT5, XT5, XT6, and the new all-electric Lyriq. Get the most out of the South Florida lifestyle in a new Cadillac from your luxury dealership located on US 1 just south of the Palmetto. Williamson Cadillac. Williamson is Miami.
I'm Ultima Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. Every time one of my children started driving, it was terrifying. I am quite aware of the dangers being on the road. Thousands of accidents happen across the country. We see it every day. These families' lives will be changed in an instant. We fight for these families as if they were our own. We've become America's largest injury law firm by winning cases just like these. If you've been injured in a car accident, call us.
Injured? Dial #law or visit forthepeople.com for an office near you. Puka, Bella, I'm sure you've noticed some changes.
Who are you talking to?
I'm just practicing for when I have to tell the dogs about the twins, because they'll...
Be fine in the spacious third row seat.
But the twins...
Can sleep peacefully thanks to the rear manual sunshade.
And what about the...
Extra cargo space for strollers and dog beds?
I guess you're right.
Can we go to the hospital now? The contractions are getting closer.
The 3-row Lexus TX. Because everyone should feel like the center of the universe. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
Looking to get nailed? Party Peter and Perfect Choice Roofing have shingles, and they know how to use them. At roofhotline.com, you can get your instant free estimate in 30 seconds and compare roof options right away. They handle quick fixes, inspections, and new roofs, all with top-notch warranties. Don't wait until the next storm to make your move. Go to roofhotline.com today. Perfect Choice Roofing. Home repairs with a championship mindset.
I'm Mark Anajar. I'm Glenn Levine. I'm Ellie Anajar. And we're Anajar and Levine. Experience the Anajar and Levine difference by calling us with any of your legal needs. Call 1-800-747-FREE for a free consultation and take back control of your life.
Main office, Fort Lauderdale.
The drive starts at Ed Moore's Side.
The pregame show for real Miami football fans on FM 104.3 WQAM.
Final segment, Game Day Uncensored. Dolphins, Ravens coming up. Normally we take you right up to kickoff, but today we've got a Heat game coming up, the Heat and the San Antonio Spurs. I'll have an abbreviated pre-Heat, our local pregame coverage for the Miami Heat broadcast coming up for you starting at 7:45. So we'll end here at around 7:40-ish, and then I'll come back. I'll give you an abbreviated pre-Heat. But Dolphins, Ravens tonight. And before we get there, Game Day Uncensored, by the way, brought to you by the Lexus TX. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. Why don't we do probably our favorite segment? Let's get to our Porpoise Props.
It's time for...
I don't know about you, but that looked like money.
Porpoise Props.
Hopefully you didn't jinx us.
Props.
All right, Appel, let's dive in here. We were just kind of looking at the line right now. Not a prop bet, but the spread has stayed at 7.5. Ravens are 7.5 point favorites. Dolphins 7.5 point dogs. If you bet the Dolphins to cover the 7.5, minus 110. Dolphins money line is currently at plus 350.
Wow. And again, if you're thinking about betting the spread tonight, remember, in Tua's 8 career games that he has started as an underdog of 6 or more points against the spread, he is 7-0-1.
So let's start right there. Tua, anytime touchdown. Does that tickle your fancy at all? That would require him to run for a touchdown, which I believe the last time he ran for a touchdown was against the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday Night Football, plus 1,400. Anytime touchdown, Tua Tagovailoa.
Probably out on that. I hate to do it and humor him on this, but I'd probably, if I was going to bet a Tua specific prop, it would probably be the over 1.5 rushing yards that Hawk loves.
Well, tonight, that's up to 2.5.
Whoa!
2.5, and to hit the over, minus 130 is what you have to put down. So you're betting $130 to win 100. Tua has to get to 3 yards or more. And remember, if you're winning and he ends up kneeling the ball at the end of the game, you potentially lose that yardage.
I'm going to Funky Buddha to be with Hawk and Crowder and all of them after this. Should I bet the under on Tua rushing yards and root against Hawk? That going for us?
You know my answer. Hell yeah. Lamar Jackson rushing yards is set at, remember he's dealing with the hamstring injury, 35.5. That's the over-under. But again, you're going to bet the over minus 160. I mean, it's not even worth it.
You do alternate rushing yards there. And look, that's probably, I know why it's juiced. Cameron Wolf of NFL Network went on TV and said the vibes around the Ravens tonight are Lamarvelous. So it makes sense.
Did he really say that?
Yeah. Well, he said that he got it from Zay Flowers. But yeah, he went on and said the vibes are Lamarvelous for the Ravens. So maybe that's why he's got no limitations, and that's why that line is so juiced.
Devon Achane over-under on rushing yards, 57.5, minus 115 on the over. Does that do anything for you?
No, so we were looking at this during the break, and there were a couple of things that really jumped out at me. I like Jordan Brooks over 9.5 tackles plus assists, and I like Riley Patterson plus money over 1.5 field goals.
Okay.
That's kind of where I was looking when we were going through this.
All right, so let's see. What if because last week, if you were listening to Porpoise Props with Tobin and I, Riley Patterson over 1.5 field goals made. He got the second one in the fourth quarter. That cash. That's at plus 100 again today. Riley Patterson, 1.5 field goals made. You can get it at even money, plus 100 right now. If you do Jordan Brooks over 9.5 tackles and assists, and you parlay that with Riley Patterson over 1.5 field goals made, you get 2-bet parlay plus 250 odds.
Not bad.
Not bad. Throw a little flyer. I'll take that with you. What about on the defensive end, aside from Jordan Brooks? If the Dolphins are going to win tonight, you imagine they have to get pressure on Lamar. Lamar is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL when he does not have pressure, perhaps the best, other than Patrick Mahomes. Jalen Phillips to record a sack, plus 240. Chubb is plus 275. Zach Sealer, plus 275. And then, you get into deeper territory. Kenneth Grant, plus 375. Jordan Brooks, plus 425. Chop Robinson, plus 450.
Kenneth Grant has better odds for a sack than Chop Robinson
He
does.
does.
What a world.
But if you think this is a show-me-something game for JP and Bradley Chubb, hey, NFL GMs out there, get me the hell out of here. I want to go contend. And you feel confident about them putting together some film tonight, primetime, nationally televised, plus 240 for JP, plus 275 for Bradley Chubb.
I don't hate the Bradley Chubb one. He's got 4 sacks this season in 8 games. I know he's a little bit banged up coming into this game, but I think you're right. A little extra motivation. I don't know if he wants to get out of here. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. But maybe there is a little extra motivation for him to maybe get to Lamar Jackson. And don't forget, the last time he played the Ravens, that catastrophic knee injury that cost him the playoffs in 2023 and all of the 2024 season. So maybe he's trying to get a little bounce back against the Ravens for his own personal self.
So Devon Achane on Porpoise Props, Dan, you know this, has been our go-to. Devon Achane maybe parlayed with something else. Tobin's been trying to work in a Zach Sealer sack. Has not worked for him yet. But Devon Achane, anytime touchdown is minus 180. You can get Devon Achane 2 or more touchdowns at plus 325. Does kind of interest me a little bit. Lamar Jackson, anytime touchdown, plus 170 tonight. That I have already put in.
What about a little Derrick Henry, Devon Achane touchdown parlay?
Derrick Henry's minus 260.
Oh.
Devon Achane minus 180. You need both those guys to score a touchdown. You're getting it at just plus 120. I mean, if you feel strongly about it, which it's a good bet, there's a reason why the odds are what they are. You put it in at plus 120, decent odds, but I think you can get better money spent elsewhere. Well, there you go. That's your Porpoise props. We're riding with Jordan Brooks, tackles and assists over 9.5. And Riley Patterson, this is what it's come to.
Your guy. This is your guy.
1.5 field goals made tonight.
MVP.
That's our parlay. Hey, who else called Riley Patterson Pro Bowl season? Who else? Before we end here, it's time to predict the game ball. It's our player to watch, brought to you by the Lexus TX. Room for all your passions in 3 rows of luxurious comfort. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer. We'll go around the room here. I'll start with Appel. Dan Day, I'll go to you after. Predict your game ball tonight. If the Dolphins were to win, we know Mike McDaniel hands went out to everybody. But you can't abide by those McDaniel rules. You choose one person. Predict your game ball, Appel.
I'm going to go Jordan Brooks. I think Jordan Brooks has had a phenomenal season. He's leading the league in tackles, was the AFC Defensive Player of the Week for his performance in Atlanta. If the Dolphins are going to win today, it is because the defense is able to keep Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in check. Therefore, give me Jordan Brooks.
All right.
I'll give Jordan Brooks the game.
Okay. I like that.
He's not giving me anything.
I do like that. Best Dolphins defensive player all season long. Dan Day, who you got for your game ball today?
Hate to give it to you, but if we're going to win this game, it's going to be on the leg of Riley Patterson.
My guy.
I'm going to have to need a lot of field goals and probably going to need a game-winning field goal from him. If we're going to win this game, it's going to come down to Riley Patterson, so I'm going to give him the game ball.
If Riley Patterson hits a 50-plus yarder to win this game tonight, it'll be, as Tobin would say, a sans pants Hockman, Crowder, and Solana show tomorrow. You bet your ass on it. So,
minus peoples.
I'm going with Minkah Fitzpatrick tonight.
Okay.
Prime time, big time player. And I know he hasn't been great. Expected him to be a little bit better this season. I get that. But going up against an AFC North opponent, his history with the Steelers, just all the makings, right, of a big-time Minkah game. He hasn't had like a big game yet. He's had an interception. He's had a couple moments, but he hasn't had his big game. This is his opportunity. Maybe he's trying to put a little film, a little tape together to try to get out of here as well. But I like Minkah Fitzpatrick game ball tonight for the Miami Dolphins. Interception, maybe a forced fumble, some sort of big momentum swing. If the Dolphins are going to win this game, they're going to need it. Last time they beat the Ravens on Thursday Night Football, it was the defense and the safety specifically making the plays to stifle Lamar Jackson. That's my pick for game ball tonight. Gentlemen, that's going to do it for Game Day Uncensored. Kind of just quick final thoughts here, Appel. Dolphins, if they win this one, look, we're not buying into the team, but conversations tomorrow, like we said, are going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, because it's been all about Mike McDaniel and how hot is his seat. And it's been Tua Tagovailoa and all of the noise that he's brought upon himself. Can he build off of the performance he had in Atlanta where he looked like the old version of himself? Can the Dolphins run game do what it did last week against Atlanta, tonight against Baltimore? And will we see a repeat performance by the defense? Or is Lamar Jackson, is Derrick Henry, are they going to run all over this front seven that has really struggled against everybody this season except for, of all people, Bijan Robinson? I think it is very hard to predict what we're going to see tonight. All I know is if the Dolphins are getting into a shootout, probably not going to bode well for them.
Appel, you're working. Appel's a play-by-play broadcaster for Sports USA Live. Your game Sunday will be on the airwaves here on WQA. Remind me what game it is.
The 4-4 Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young supposedly going to be back against the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau.
So make sure you're listening this Sunday to WQAM for that game. Dan Day will have your post-game show, Game Day Uncensored post-game show after our Heat broadcast. Once we break here, I'll have an abbreviated pre-Heat, so more of me coming up. This has been Game Day Uncensored. Thanks to Perk, thanks to Omar, thanks to Dan. We'll talk to everybody next Sunday. Fins up.
It's time to set sail with Margaritaville at Sea during our biggest Black Friday sale ever.